It all started 8 months ago, in April, when the protagonist was summoned to the school principal's office. At the time, Sakura Makoto was 16 years old and was told that he was expelled from school, which he didn't immediately believe. In the end, he had to accept the fact that it was not a joke. As he walked out of the principal's classroom, he noticed the slanted glances of the students. They were discussing how the protagonist had only been in school for a fortnight and he had already been kicked out. There were also rumors that Sakura had beaten up his classmate and was expelled because of that. One of the crowd thought it was right, and his friend asked him to be quieter because the hero could hear him and beat him up. But the guy didn't care and they could say whatever they wanted about him. Sakura actually jumped up to stop the bullying, and then it turned into a fight and the only person who got beaten up was him. But because the bully was the son of the student council president, the school had no choice but to kick him out. As the boy went up the stairs, he was called out by some guy. From the surprise, the hero fell to the ground and the guy asked him not to think he could get away from him so easily. The president's son didn't know what a supporting character like the hero was thinking. He suggested that next time, if he wanted to do this dumb justice again, he should remember to pick the right person. With those words, he opened a bottle of water and poured it on Sakura's head. There was nothing left for the hero to do but just keep silent and walk home. His parents were shocked to hear that he had been expelled from school. And this happened just when both his parents were so busy. His father thought that his son was nothing but trouble. He asked his wife to call the school immediately, and the girl dialed the principal's number. Without saying anything, the protagonist turned around and slammed the door loudly. The father ordered Makoto to stop, for he was not finished yet, but Sakura replied that he was already finished. After all, they will blame him for all of this anyway. With those words, the guy walked out of the house and slammed the door behind him. Sakura staggered through the streets of the city and thought how miserable everything was. For him, this situation was stupid, but funny because it was always hard to talk to his parents about school problems. The guy only dreamed of living a happier life and sent everyone to hell, deciding that he wanted to have more freedom. Not far from himself, just outside the city buildings, he saw a strange thing and didn't realize since when it had been there. As time went on, he noticed the exact same strange buildings and felt the earthquake again. At one point, the earthquake was so strong that the guy could barely stay on his feet. But grabbing the fence, he managed to hold on, and then he noticed a strange thing appearing right behind him. It was like those constructions that appeared in the city center, and the hero didn't understand what was happening. Sakura immediately wondered if it was possible to go down there and remembered that he had the internet. He quickly started searching his phone for information about this case. As it turned out, these things were not only in Aomori, but all over the country and even around the world. Also published a post about no one going in there because there were strange creatures that looked like monsters. In the comments, someone wrote that he also read about the same dungeon, and Sakura laughed. The hero was insanely happy for such an occasion. Later, the mysterious structure that suddenly appeared all over the world soon became known as dungeons. And to find happiness and freedom, he entered it, and it really changed his life. Around 6 o'clock in the evening, many earthquakes above level 5 occurred around the world, but the epicenter was unknown. Also mentioned were mysterious structures that people called dungeons. There were reports of people being attacked by strange creatures upon entering these structures and reports of deaths. In this regard, the government has issued a notice that it is investigating and will issue an emergency evacuation order tomorrow. It was also asked on TV for those living in the area to stay away from these structures. Sakura's parents were shocked at this news while not knowing where their son. At this time, the boy was already descending down the spiral staircase into the dungeon. He was in awe of how this cave looked from the inside. Suddenly, he heard a voice that the level system was activated, and it startled him. He couldn't understand what that voice was and decided it was a schizo in his head. Also, he didn't understand what the level system was. He assumed that one could say open status and the system would show the status, things and magic items he had. Sakura didn't believe it was real and could be like in the manga. But still, he decided to try and ask to open the status, and then a table appeared in front of him. The hero didn't understand why his stats were so low, and a voice in his head told him that if his health points dropped to 0, he would die. The guy exclaimed that he knew that, and the voice decided to shut up. The voice system apologized, for it thought it should have explained it. It was a bit confusing, and she offered to close the status, but the hero said it was fine and she could keep it. The voice was happy to hear that. Sakura already roughly understood what was going on and noticed some skills. It said that once he reached a certain level, he would gain random skills or upgrade an existing skill. His skills included infinite level increase and first level fire magic. The hero did not understand what infinite enhancement meant, and the voice explained that it was a skill that helped him level up beyond a set limit. As for the magic skill, the voice decided to show Sakura in practice with a monster, whereupon a creature appeared in front of him. It was a level 1 slime, and it looked just like the one in the game. The voice advised to point his hand at the monster and then say the desired skill, and the guy did so. To his surprise, a level 1 fire magic worked and shot the slime. The hero quickly withdrew his hand, for the fire was too hot. As a result, Saikyou fell backwards and his level increased by 1. After the hero defeated the slime, he thought it was funny. At this point, his lesson was over and the voice said goodbye to him. The boy wanted to know her name, but the voice replied that he could call her anything he wanted. Saikyou decided to call her Freedom and the voice said that it was a great name. She wished him good luck as she said goodbye when suddenly the guy felt someone's gaze on him from behind. Standing in front of them was a huge minotaur for which level 20 was recommended. Saikyou opened his mouth in surprise, not knowing what to do. The monster didn't wait and immediately attacked the guy. From the blow, Saikyou flew backwards, but he was not confused and wanted to retaliate in flight. Before he fell, the hero wanted to use fire magic of the first level, but it did not work for some reason and the hero fell to the ground. Saikyou didn't understand why his skill was missing and decided to open the status. As he expected, his mana was at 0. The guy gloomed as he thought he had been hit by a stupid slime and then spent all his mana on it. But suddenly he noticed that he had a new skill in him, and he got it after taking level 2. In that case, he decided to try it on a minotaur. Saikyou dodged the minotaur's subsequent blows and exclaimed that he would definitely be a corpse with this skill. As he ran away from the enraged monster, he looked around as if searching for something. The hero finally found the slime that he had defeated earlier. When Saikyou ran near it, he provoked the monster that attacked and lost. The slime disappeared and the guy thought he had succeeded. Thanks to the defeated monster, his level increased to 3 and then to 5. The hero didn't realize why his level had increased so much compared to the previous time and noticed he had a 1000th experience multiplier. His skill allowed him to get an experience multiplier of 1000, and thus, when defeating monsters, he would receive 1000 times more experience points than usual. The guy smiled and thought about what would happen if he also continued to level up. A day passed, but the hero never returned home. While the father was thinking what to do, the hero's mother burst into the room. The girl exclaimed that she had received a message from the Makoto an hour ago and her father asked where he was now. The girl replied in horror that he was now in the dungeon, from which the father was shocked. Meanwhile, the hero had already managed to pump his level to 15th. After being in the dungeon for half a day, Saikyou also learnt some funny things. Even if a wall or floor has been destroyed, it will return to normal after a while. The same was true for monster respawning. Saikyou stabbed a huge minotaur and thought that besides, there was no communication here. Earlier, he had gone up the stairs and decided that he should have texted his mother. He surmised that he should have gone out for a while, and as soon as he went up the stairs a bit, the minotaur also lost connection. When Saikyou came to the stairs, he stopped attacking him. It became clear to the hero that the monsters could not leave the dungeon. At one point, a huge minotaur almost hit the hero with its huge fist, but fortunately missed. The hero decided it was time to go out a second time to rest and regain his strength. But he overplayed his hand and the hero was cornered. While the minotaur was catching up with the Saikyou, the guy spotted a new small monster and chased after it. He was only thinking about how to increase his level because his attacks had become ineffective. The guy found himself in a small cave that the minotaur couldn't get into. His health was running low and he had no mana at all. In addition, he was tired and hungry. At first, it might have seemed like a hopeless situation. But suddenly, the monsters that the hero had defeated earlier when he entered this cave began to appear. This came in handy, and the hero immediately dealt with them. As a result, his experience multiplier skill was used again and his level increased first by 4, then by 5, and then rose to level 25. As soon as Saikyou blew off the head of the huge minotaur and his level increased by another 18 levels, something clicked inside him. He was delighted at such wonderful freedom and pronounced that the dungeon was true freedom. 2 weeks later, reporters filmed from a helicopter what was now happening in the square outside the building. A huge crowd had gathered there, demanding that the dungeons be opened. For the present, all the attention of the world was turned to the meeting on the question of opening the dungeons. One of the chairmen thought that the dungeons should be opened, and he thought that by now all the countries were aware that the items obtained from the dungeons, as well as the level system, could not be explained by modern science. Plus, they knew that they had no choice but to apply all of this to the technological revolution. One chairman surmised that the man had insisted that the dungeons should be open to ordinary people as well. The speaking chairman observed that the man apparently had not studied the information at all. Not only weapons, but even modern scientific equipment using telecommunication waves could not be used in the dungeons. They had to discard their previous way of thinking, and what they needed now was not an army but high-level people. Regardless of regional boundaries, the chairman thought they should let anyone freely explore the dungeon and the state would buy back the items they got from the dungeon. And that was the most efficient way. Of course, there were dangers involved in exploring dungeons, but people were responsible for their own decision to explore these dungeons. And what's more, there were people who dreamed of money, fame, and freedom, and the state had to give a name to those who sought all these things. They had to come up with a nickname so that such people would not be idolized or humiliated. The people decided that they would call such adventurers gamblers. After the appearance of dungeons, 8 months passed and December came. There was a White Region dungeon in the province of Aomori, which was recommended from the 40th level. A battle was raging on the 5th floor of the dungeon. The girls asked the guy if he was alright and he replied that he was fine. The guy didn't realize who this monster was, for it was completely different from the Minotaur they had met before. Also, its recommended level was unknown. Along with the guy were 2 girls, level 30 and 34. One was called Kudo Yuri and the other Kudo Aya. Aya suggested to the guy named Hiro to get out of here. The 37th level guy named Hiro ordered the girls to run away. After all, if they all ran together, they would just die, but the girls couldn't think of that. Hiro ran at the monster and Aya tried to stop her older brother. Hiro ordered her to shut up and not think about it, for he wanted to stop him so they would take the opportunity to escape. The girl shouted to Hiro not to do that, but the guy was already approaching the Minotaur, thinking that the monster was underestimating him. The Minotaur with one swing broke his sword, with which Hiro wanted to block the blow. The boy ended up unarmed and the girls ordered him to flee. Looking at the Minotaur, the lad remembered his past life. He apologized to his sisters. He thought he was a stupid, selfish person for making them participate in such nonsense. And now his sisters could only remember him as a bloody mincemeat. As the Minotaur was about to strike, the Cairo boy thought about how sorry he was. The guy covered his eyes expecting a blow, but opened them when it didn't happen. A certain person flew past the girls at high speed, knocking the hat off the eye's head. It was Saikyou who dealt the Minotaur a crushing blow. It tore off its arm and made a huge hole through the monster's body. The hero landed on the ground and the Minotaur fell. Hiro looked at the hero in shock, who asked how he felt. Earlier, Saikyou heard the screams, so he rushed here. The sisters thanked the hero for his help and Hiro couldn't understand how he defeated that Minotaur with one punch. They all wondered where the guy got such strength and the hero blanched. Hiro decided to find out the hero's level as well and Saikyou decided to check it considering how many monsters he had killed. The guy answered that his level was 10,000. He said his name, but it was as if the group of people didn't hear him and only asked him to repeat what he said earlier. As the hero had said earlier, his level became 10,000. Aya didn't understand why her sister wasn't using recovery magic, but the girl said that she had run out of mana. With this time, Hiro still couldn't believe what the hero said. Saikyou showed her status and Hiro said that it was just unbelievable. Thus, thanks to a random combination of infinite level increase and an experience multiplier of 1000, he was able to do it. The guy thought he was very lucky, but the Cairo called him stupid. He could smugly inform others about his level and cheating skills like this, but the hero didn't know what he was talking about. In Hiro's opinion, he was a complete fool, because if this came out, not only the Japanese government but the whole world would know about it. No matter if he was a good man or a bad man, he would be hunted down and used to his advantage. And by all appearances, he didn't think long before telling his level. Hiro thought that he might lose his freedom that way, and only after that did Saikyou think about it. Saikyou looked at the man in horror and asked him to pretend he didn't hear anything. Hiro laughed and asked him not to worry. Besides, he saw that Saikyou was a good person and he had saved him. Pointing at the girls, Hiro said that they hadn't heard anything yet. Saikyou thanked his uncle, saying that he would be more careful now, but Hiro had said earlier that he was the one who should have thanked him. That's when the girls approached them, deciding that something had happened to them. The brother already knew it was his sister's tone and decided that she had heard everything. He asked her what she wanted to say. Aya told Saikyou that he was very strong and he must be targeting that very dungeon. But the hero didn't know what she meant and the girl assumed that he wasn't outside at all. Hiro also found it hard to believe that the guy lived in that dungeon. The first one to complete the dungeon of Red Shadow Rank N in Okinawa, that is, the player who defeats the boss on the deepest floor will receive an incredible bonus from the government, as much as 30 million. It was an incredible amount of money, and the hero found it exciting interesting. This was a dungeon that even the government was willing to offer a reward for, and it was definitely extremely interesting. If that was true, then Saikyou was going to set off immediately and thank the group of Hiro. He decided that if he set off today, he would arrive around tomorrow, Monday. The girl replied that tomorrow was Saturday and asked how long he had been here. The guy decided to evade answering and said it didn't matter. Ever since Saikyou ran away from home, he had been in this dungeon and decided that the guys shouldn't know about it. The hero thanked the guys once again and said he had to go, for giving him the information. They were even and there was no need to invite him to dinner. Running away at a wild speed, Saikyou advised them to be more careful from now on. A surprised Hiro looked at his sisters. Saikyou also apologized in farewell for making them worry. Hiro thought about the fact that he was the eldest and wouldn't be able to protect them forever. If this continued, he would cease to be a player. Aya glanced at her brother unhappily, thinking that he was just going to give up halfway through. After all, he was the one who had lit the fire in them, and the girls had asked him not to get their brother worked up over nothing, calling him grandfather. From that moment on, they decided to become the strongest family of players. Aya, in that case, suggested that they try to do so. The older brother was touched by his sister's words, and Aya asked him not to cry because he was the eldest. Hiro agreed and exclaimed that they would try their best to become the strongest team in Japan. It was quite cold outside, for it was already winter. In Okinawa, the winter was quite cold. It had been 8 months since the dungeons appeared, and many shops and places had already been set up for the players. It was at one such place that the hero decided to enter. He was welcomed into the center of the Aomori branch dungeon. Here, they could buy and sell items 24/7. The entire staff was shocked at what the hero had done. He poured out right in front of the female employee a pile of all sorts of jewelry from the dungeon that was endlessly pouring out of his small backpack. The girl looked first at the pile of jewelry and then at his rucksack in shock, not understanding how it could be. The hero thought something was wrong, and the girl explained that the size of the bag and the number of items in it were slightly off. The hero explained that it was a magic bag, and it had fallen to him from a monster named Adamantite. It didn't matter what kind of item was put in it or how many, they would still all fit, and it was very convenient. The guy noticed that the girl's eyes glittered, and she clearly wanted one for herself. She was thrilled that the hero was so strong that he could overpower a giant adamantine turtle, even with so many items. The girl immediately offered him to create his own team and wanted to name his level, but Sakura asked to just give him the money and that was it. Turning his head, the guy saw that even in such a place there was one of the dungeons. This struck him as funny, and he only now noticed that there was a dungeon right in the shop. More specifically, this shop was built around a dungeon. The girl called the hero a distinguished and very rich guest. She explained to him that this was a low-ranked dungeon, but so far no one had defeated the boss here. She hinted at the hero by saying that as strong as he was, he could probably do it. The hero asked how long it would take to evaluate the items, and the girl said it would take about 10 minutes. In that case, the guy decided to try to do it. This faded prison dungeon had a TS rank where two guys were discussing the dungeon. One of them said that he had heard rumors that it was very scary, so he came to check it out but didn't see anything. His friend assumed that he had already been defeated since it was ranked TS, and that's why he didn't see anything. While the guys were having a conversation, one of them looked up and saw a man that swiftly swept right over them. It was a hero who was advancing at a wild speed towards the boss. He was absolutely certain that the boss was still here, for there was one peculiarity of the dungeons. On the floor with the boss, the atmosphere was thicker, exactly like the same room the hero had reached. Raising his head, he saw the boss in front of him, which turned out to be a slime king with an unknown recommended level. The guy told him that he was caught, but the slime wanted to slip away. Saikyou rushed after it, darting away from the many pillars in that room. Although the slime was of low rank, but no one could defeat him until now. Besides, it was hard to spot, and the guy admitted that even for his 10,000th level, it was difficult. If that was the case, the guy decided to use the skill right in flight. The hero used 10th level ice magic, and the entire room was covered in ice, bounding slime. After the boss was immobilized, Sakura hit the ice and it shattered into pieces. The boss was defeated and a weapon drop fell out of it. This was quite interesting for the hero, and he decided that it was time to head back to the shop. Upon killing the boss, his level increased by another 9,900. Sakura decided that he had heard everything wrong and asked to open the status. But seeing the 19,900th level in the status, the hero was shocked to see that it had almost doubled. The Slime King was so fast that he was hard to defeat, which meant the amount of experience points was incredibly high. But at this moment, the hero wasn't worried about the level at all. He was more interested in a new skill called Flying Cloud Magic of the first level. As he understood it, it meant flying. Sakura decided to use the level 1 Flying Cloud Magic skill and was crazy about the fact that he was soaring above the ground. Well, of course, it was tantamount to if he jumped up a bit, as expected of a level 1. Sakura of course thought about being able to fly himself to Okinawa, but in all likelihood he would have to get there by plane. 2 days passed and the boy returned to Okinawa. Sakura was excited to see a bunch of players walking around near the Red Shadow N rank dungeon. The hero hadn't been to the dungeon for 2 days and heard the talk that the N rank was a real creep. People were talking about a monster that was so strong that you couldn't see its level. Still, if it was that easy, there wouldn't be a reward of 30 million. Hearing about the money, Sakura turned around at the guys who were discussing it. All they said around was that it was unrealistic and people were afraid to die. One of the men said he wasn't joking at all and advised everyone to go home. Noticing a young boy at the entrance to the dungeon, the man turned to Sakura. It seemed to him that the hero was probably tempted by that 30 million, but he advised the guy to give it up. According to him, this dungeon was unlike others, and even with a level 66 like him, he could only run away. Even though the man didn't know the guy's level, he advised him to stay away. But at that moment, a helicopter flew past them, and the hero made it clear that he hadn't heard anything. The helicopter landed right in front of them, and it was the first time the guy had seen it so close. A short girl came out of it that was accompanied by people in business suits. Apparently these were her guards. She immediately ordered the lad out of the way, calling him a beggar. Saikyou was surprised. Besides, it was the first time he had seen a real, rich lady. He decided to find out what she would do to him if he refused. Besides, Saikyou couldn't understand what such a child could forget here, although if one thought about it, the same could be said of him. The girl exclaimed that she wasn't a child like him, and as the hero should have known by now, she bore the beautiful name of Maria Feingold. But Saikyou replied that he knew no such thing. Suddenly the guy remembered the man he had been talking to the other day, but he had disappeared somewhere. The hero was surprised when the girl said that she was level 99 and that this dungeon was nothing special for her. The hero decided to clarify, and the girl said that it really was, and called the hero a fool. The 99th level was the highest level, but the hero did not understand how such a small thing could achieve it. The girl asked him to repeat what he had just said. The hero decided not to show any sign that it was small for him and apologized, saying that he had said it by accident. Earlier she had talked about not being a child, and the hero decided to find out how old she was. The girl was outraged that he could ask a lady her age, but replied that she was 12 years old. In that case, Saikyou said she was a child, and the girl asked to repeat. She was shocked with the hero not realizing where he got so much ignorance from. The girl accompanying her asked permission to explain to him and said that in the body of Mrs. Mary flowed Russian Jewish blood, so a 12-year-old girl is recognized as an adult. Maria looked smugly at the guy, thinking he understood everything, and Saikyou decided not to argue. In that case, the girl walked past the hero and asked to clear a path for them to enter the dungeon. She asked Mayu and everyone else to stay here and wait for her. The people accompanying her bowed and asked her to be careful. Saikyou looked at the dungeon and thought about the fact that she would be there alone. Still, she was level 99, so she should be fine. While he was thinking about it, Maya apologized to him. Saikyou looked at her questioningly, and the girl asked her to forget about it. Saikyou entered the dungeon of the Red Shadow and rank. It was cool for him to see a new monster on the ground floor for the first time. Saikyou smiled and thought that the inside was pretty good too, since it was an N rank. While he was admiring the dungeon, shouts came from afar. Not realizing what was happening, Saikyou squinted at the dungeon corridor, where he noticed some movement. Maria, who was begging for someone to save her, was running towards him at breakneck speed. Right behind her ran a huge monster that looked like a wild boar. The guy frowned and thought that it was the same level 99 monster that was begging for help. While the girl was running away from the huge boar in tears, the guy couldn't understand what she was doing and ordered her to duck sharply. Saikyou used level 10 fire magic and asked the child if she was alright. The girl looked surprised at the boar the hero had killed. Her gaze turned cold as the boy held out his hand for her to get up and said that she didn't ask for his help. The hero thought about the fact that this was a blatant lie. She demanded that his hand be taken away from her, for she could stand up herself. As the hero had said earlier, she was still a child after all, but the girl exclaimed that her name was Maria Fein. Just as Saikyou thought she was a 99th level rich Jewess and didn't understand why she didn't fight. But the girl figured there was no other way. With great pride, she said that she had never defeated a monster by herself, and the one still moved. This meant that she didn't have level 99, and the guy said she was a liar, but the girl exclaimed that she wasn't. After all, Maya and the rest of her servants were fighting monsters, and she was heroically finishing them off. In that case, the boy wished her luck in getting out of here and went on his way. Suddenly the girl swooped down on him and straddled him from the back. The guy didn't understand what she was doing, and Maria smirked. She decided to give the hero a marvelous opportunity to join her group, but Saikyou indifferently pointed her way to the exit. The girl shouted even louder that she would not return. After all, she had come here to defeat this dungeon. The hero suggested that in that case she should go out and ask for help from his man in black, and said that he had nothing to do here. But Maria squeezed the guy even tighter and thought he was joking after he so passionately rushed in to save her. She was sure that she liked him, but the hero didn't realize why she thought that. By the way, she would also like to ask to kill monsters for her because she was terribly scared. While she was muttering something, the guy was surprised that she was getting scared. In short, she would like to join him and promised not to let him go until he agreed. The hero hoped she didn't mean it. At some point the guy gave in and asked her to just let him go. The girl was insanely happy, but the hero asked her to wait until he said. He decided to say bluntly that the benefit of their union was nil. In other words, the girl thought that if she took the guy with her, she would get no benefit from him, and Saikyou thought she was joking like that. Every time he wanted to call her child, but correcting himself, he called her by her first name. He wondered why she needed a dungeon, because it wasn't like she needed 30 million so badly. But Mary's goal was to finish this dungeon in order for her parents to notice this achievement. She didn't need experience or 30 million yen, she just wanted the honorable title of the person who completed the Red Shadow dungeon. The hero was extremely surprised by her declaration. Not knowing what to say, Sakura silently looked at the girl who was waiting for him to answer. Sakura did not understand her. After all, for people who like to live freely and happily like him, being the center of attention was comparable to prison. Sakura was agreeable, but he had a condition. She had to say that she completed the dungeon alone and held out her hand. In that case, he was willing to work with Maria. The girl gladly shook his hand and agreed. Here it was as if she was switched, and she again pulled out her hand and turned away from the hero. By the way, she thought it should be an honor for him to be on the same team as her. Sakura decided to clarify that they would only be together in this dungeon, and the girl exclaimed that it was already clear. After that, the heroes went up to the second underground floor of the Red Shadow dungeon, where they met a devil boar with a recommendation for level 60. Maria decided that this time they would definitely succeed. Sakura surmised that they needed to finish the dungeon, but if Maria couldn't defeat the monster, then that was the real problem. The girl demanded respect for her, but the hero asked her to shut up. As it turned out, she had come here unarmed with her bare hands, and it was unclear to the hero what her plan was. In that case, he decided to give her something. She might have been a little scared at first, but she was still level 99, so the hero felt that it should be okay. A girl took a knife and threw herself into an attack on a devilish boar. Overcoming her fears, Mary closed her eyes and stabbed the boar, whereupon it fell to the ground. The girl was ecstatic, saying that she had butchered a pig and began yelling that she had done it for the first time. She alone was able to kill the boar, and to the lad such a sight seemed tinny. Level 99 wasn't just a number after all, and if it continues like this, everything will be fine. Descending further and further, Maria asked the guy to move. She was already imagining how she would finish this dungeon and accidentally skipped one step. The girl flew nose down and fell, but the hero thought she was alright. So they reached the third underground floor. The hero was curious about something and decided to ask the girl about it. He wondered what skills she was able to unlock since she hadn't used them yet. Maria smirked, deciding that he was curious after all. Sakura motioned for her to start telling. After all, he wasn't going to ask it twice. Maria immediately agreed to tell and showed her fingers. She discovered 4 super strong skills. Maria decided it would be faster to show and turned to face the wall. She applied a level 5 vacuum magic skill. Thus, she created an air wave that hit the ceiling instead of the wall. The hero was surprised, for this was the first time he had seen one. This magic allowed her to shoot vacuum knives, except she was aiming at the wall and hit the ceiling. The girl said it was insanely difficult and she had trouble controlling it, but she decided that with the second skill, the hero would definitely fall. The second skill was level 10 recovery magic, and it sounded strong to Sakura. No matter how badly he was injured, she would be able to heal him instantly. She also had a third rare skill. She possessed level 1 revival magic, and the guy assumed that she could revive the dead. It looked like it, and perhaps she thought she was the only one who could use that magic in the entire world. Sakura didn't realize what it was about this skill that was like a bug, and she finally moved on to the fourth skill. It was a super rare skill of experience multiplier by 10. She noticed the arrogant face on the guy and got angry. Sakura was perplexed at how she could consider this skill rare. She tried to explain to him that when you defeat a monster you get 10 times more experience points than other people. Maria was shocked that he had never heard of such a super rare skill, and it became clear to the hero how she got 99 levels. Sakura had never thought about it before, but it was possible that there was a person who had also obtained the infinite level increase skill. He was distracted from his thoughts and looked at the girl who asked what skills he had. Still, he didn't understand why she was so angry at him and thought that it was impossible to talk about his experience multiplier or infinite level increase. Besides, this girl was fierce and by any chance she would tell someone and he had to be careful. In that case, the hero decided to move on to other skills. He named such as 10th level fire magic, 10th level ice magic, 10th level lightning magic, and 1st level flying cloud magic. With surprise, Maria opened her mouth and asked him to repeat. She was delighted at how much 10th level magic he had, and the flying cloud magic she had heard of for the first time. Her eyes glittered and she admitted that the guy wasn't that simple and was very powerful. Sakura felt embarrassed and he thanked her for the compliment. But then the girl came to her senses and gave him a mean look again and turned away. Sakura already knew what she wanted to say about being the strongest. Maria called the guy a dog and praised him for his answer, and Sakura thought she was optimistic. The girl decided to make sure that with those skills he was definitely level 99, and the guy mumbled that he was. Maria grinned and said that it was just as she thought. They were 2 level 99s, and also together. To her, that meant that they were the strongest group in the world. Sakura thought that it could be so, and he was the leader of the strongest group in the world. The hero couldn't stand it and laughed, saying that it was really quite a strange story. Of course, this could have benefited both sides, but the hero could not assume that he could have teamed up with her. Maria thought he had a rather cute laugh and asked the guy not to hide his face. Saikyou blushed slightly and told the girl that she was talking too much, asking her to back off. Perhaps that wasn't so bad for him. One day the main character teamed up with someone, and you could find something interesting in that. Saikyou and Maria reached the 6th underground floor of the Red Shadow dungeon. The girl screamed at what she saw there. She clung to the guy and screamed that it was zombies, blood and rot while the hero fought off the monsters. Barely was Saikyou distracted as the girl was grabbed by living roots and a flock of large birds lifted Maria up. She immediately screamed to the hero who had to rescue her. When all the monsters were defeated, the girl smiled and said that it was pretty easy. Saikyou could barely hold back, not knowing what to say to her. The heroes noticed that there was another fight going on not far from them. A man was fighting a devil wolf and shouting that he wouldn't die here. Maria decided to save the player herself and told the hero about it. This idea didn't seem like a good idea to Saikyou. Barely had the girl pounced on the monster as she shouted to Saikyou to help her. The boy couldn't believe she was serious. The rescued player thanked the heroes for their help. They saved him and also restored his mana. The girl replied to the man that it was a simple matter and all was well, but the hero asked her to speak for herself. The guy smiled and admitted he was in a hurry and walked towards the exit. But Maria thought he was going to the boss and pointed in a completely different direction. The guy said that it was already over, and Saikyou and the girl were surprised that someone had already managed to finish the dungeon. But that turned out not to be the case. It was just that the guy thought it was impossible. He assumed that the heroes were very strong. But strength alone could not defeat this dungeon. It turned out that there were a lot of people standing around the Red Shadow dungeon. This was the 7th underground floor of the Red Shadow dungeon, and no one knew what they should do next. Right in front of them was a huge room that was filled with pure bubbling poison. It was a poisonous lake. As they came closer, the girl crouched down on her knees and verified that it was poison. Someone from the crowd ordered the girl to step back, for if she touched it, her body would slowly go numb. It was the girl that spoke quite confidently about it. Just about an hour ago, an idiot jumped into the water, and if he hadn't been helped by the girl with glasses, he would have been finished. By the way, all the people around were expecting someone who could use detox magic. No one knew how to use it, so people decided that it wasn't fate yet. Everyone here, including this girl, was waiting for a detox magic user to appear and were even willing to pay him. Maria decided to ask the hero what he was going to do, but apparently Saikyou didn't even turn an ear and was completely calm. He buckled the harness of his backpack tighter and figured that if they couldn't use detoxification magic, it was no big deal because there was another way. Maria couldn't understand what he was going to do. When the guy adjusted his backpack, he took the girl in his arms, who could not understand anything and only looked at him silently with surprised eyes. Maria thought it was a total disgrace and demanded that it stop, not understanding why Saikyou was doing this so suddenly. The hero asked her to hold on tight, after which he pushed himself off the ground and jumped up. They almost touched the water and the girl shrieked hysterically that apparently the hero didn't think much long about it. She reckoned that this way they would soon be soup. It was a level 1 flying cloud magic skill. The main characters were floating and the girl was angry at the hero who could have warned her about it beforehand. Saikyou laughed and apologized. Maria asked the guy not to paw her and demanded that he stop doing it. Saikyou thought that in that case he should have let her go straight into the water and asked her not to hit him because she was level 99 and it hurt him. So they finally made it to dry land and the hero let go of Maria, who was shocked at what Saikyou had done. She thought that Saikyou just didn't realize it because in front of a bunch of people, someone who wasn't her boyfriend did this to her. The guy enjoyed the flight so much that he decided to go back for another round trip. At this time, Maria wrapped her arms around herself thinking about how fucked up he was holding her. Thoughts came into her head that now they just had to. The hero interrupted her thoughts and apologized for waiting. He was just very curious. Supposedly, there should have been a staircase here that led to the 8th floor of the dungeon. The girl looked in the guy's wake and blushed. The hero didn't understand what was wrong with her and said that today they should go as far as possible. Besides, she previously wanted to show her parents that she was the first to pass this dungeon. Maria clenched her fists and said that she would have to tell her father and mother and no other way. She shouted to Saikyou and the boy looked back. The girl said that after completing this dungeon, she would go and talk to her father and mother, but the hero already knew about it because she had talked about it earlier. Thus the 10th hour had already passed inside the Red Shadow dungeon, and during this time, the protagonists managed to reach the 13th underground floor. On the way, they met a lot of monsters that looked like goblins. The guy used level 10 fire magic and level 2 flying cloud magic. The hero was happy because this was how he managed to pump up his flight. The girl was simply delighted and exclaimed that it was exactly what she expected from him. She was distracted for a few seconds and did not notice the huge monster behind her which was about to strike her. But Sakura was in time and destroyed the goblin with her bare hands, which delighted Maria again. Sakura asked how she was feeling, and the girl replied that she was fine. By the way, she wondered how come there were so many monsters. Perhaps it was because earlier she had pressed a button that was definitely a bait for the stupid. The hero surmised that she had never heard of critical thinking. But the girl thought that buttons just existed to be pressed and the guy sighed heavily. Sakura was tired and suggested they rest in that spot, but Maria called him a wimp and said she had plenty of energy. The hero decided to take out the tent that was in his small purse. The tent was 10 times the size of the bag, and Maria was shocked at what she saw. The hero also said that he had plenty of clothes and food and asked her not to be shy and tell him. He suggested that Maria sleep first while he watched. Also, Sakura asked what she would need and offered a towel with a chair. Maria was delighted with the purse, for it looked magical, and the hero remembered that he had not shown it before. Maria's eyes sparkled and she said she wanted one too. Sakura agreed to give her the same bag in case it fell out. Maria was so happy that the hero already regretted saying that. Maria asked him to promise to do so and the hero promised her. The girl held out her little finger to him to seal their pact. In that case, Sakura sent her to bed, thinking that he was very tired of her. He was a word babysitter to her, and the girl asked him to be quiet. Mary went into the tent and quietly thanked the hero. The guy had prepared in advance from A to Z, and Maria thanked him with a smile. But then her look became displeased again, and she did not realize where her gratitude lay. She thought it was impolite. By the way, Maria said that the 10th level fire magic was very strong, but the hero didn't understand what she was getting at. The girl replied that it had saved her more than once today, and it seemed to the guy that it was the same level as the Kaido of Senkou Girin. The girl jumped up from the bed, not sure what he meant. The hero said it was nothing special, it was just what she had said earlier about the Kaido. The hero wondered how Maria knew about the Senkou no Girin team, and the girl said that everyone knew her. Considering the strength and image, it was the most popular team and they even had their own merch. The hero had a hard time believing it at first. Their leader was named Kamishiro, and the girl thought he was the most attractive of all. She longed to meet him, but the hero said he had already met him. He had once participated in a raid with him, and at that time Sakura didn't know that they were so famous. Maria was so surprised that she thought the guy was just lying, and the hero did not argue with her. The girl said that this was how he became like a human again, as he admitted it, and Sakura chased her off to bed. Maria laughed quietly and said goodnight to him. Thus, the hero once teamed up with someone and was offered to go on an adventure together. It was a group with a Kamishiro that invited him to join them. After that meeting 7 months ago, the freedom within the hero was shaken. When the hero was in the Serenity Dungeon of Rank E's in the same raid with Kamishiro Shinichi, the guy told his mate that he ran away from home and has been in the dungeons ever since. Kamishiro laughed and said that it was kind of childish and advised the hero to be a little more mature. Looking at Sakura's puzzled face, Kamishiro surmised that he had said something wrong. The girl next to Sakura advised the hero to just get used to Kamishiro, and the hero decided to agree with her. Meanwhile, a guy named Kaido who was in the same raid with them was thrilled with the guy. He got kicked out of school, ran away from home and ended up in a dungeon. He thought Sakura was an overly interesting guy. Kamishiro smiled at the guys and called them idiots and said they were a good team. The character couldn't understand what was wrong with them, while feeling like he was in an anime. The girl named Mizukawa that was next to the guy blushed. Sakura heard some sound from her and assumed that she wanted to say something, but the girl immediately ran up to her friend and hid behind her back. Mizukawa whispered something in her ear, and most likely the conversation said something about Sakura. Her friend was a girl named Nagasawa Biniko. She relayed her friend's words that she wanted to know if Sakura was a solo player. The character asked her question again, and the girl understood. She said that if he didn't know, then he shouldn't have tried. There were simply 2 types of players, solo and team players, and it's up to each individual to choose how to live. But if you got a group together, there was no need to register. By the way, Nagasawa decided to tell the guy what the name of their group was. But no sooner had she done so than the guy stepped on a trap in the form of a rock, and they were immediately attacked by a bunch of monsters. The hero apologized, noting that apparently he had stepped on something. All the squad members started fighting off the monsters, and in the middle of the fight, Kamishiro said the name Senkou no Girin. That was how they nicknamed their team. Sakura pondered, and realized that they had made up the name of the group from their names by taking the first kanji of their names. Hiro thought it was cool and bragged that it was his idea. But not that it mattered, but Nagasawa and Renge were the ones who came up with it, and there was no point in lying. But Hiro exclaimed that if there was no point, then there was no reason for her to open her mouth. The girl snapped back and said that Hiro had pissed her off. Sakura looked at the guys and hoped he wouldn't have to break them up. While the heroes were arguing, a small monster that looked like a bird flew past the hero at high speed. Sakura spotted it in time and kicked it, knocking it into the wall. After the victory, his level increased by 2 more, and the group called out to the hero. They immediately ran up to him, worried about his health. Hiro ordered the Mizukawa to quickly use recovery, but the hero didn't understand why. Hiro asked Sakura not to move while the Mizukawa started the healing, and Sakura tried to find out what was wrong with them. After all, it was just a scratch, and the hero didn't understand why they were all so worried. But suddenly his mind was blurred, and the whole picture in front of him began to distort. As a result, the guy lost consciousness. Opening his eyes, the hero jumped up from his seat and saw a kettle and a mug nearby. He was laid on the floor, covered with a blanket. Kamishiro meanwhile was sitting on a chair reading a book. He was glad that the hero had finally come to his senses, and Sakura remembered that he had fainted. Kamishiro said that it was poison. It turned out that that bird was poisonous, and this could be recognized by its poison glands on its head. The poison would penetrate the wound, and gradually causing damage would eventually lead to death. Sakura didn't understand why he was alive in such a case, but it was because the Mizukawa used detoxification magic. And while he slept like a murdered man, Hiro used the strength skill plus 100 to lower the hero to the 14th floor. Hiro smirked and ordered him to immediately thank him for his help, and Sakura did so. Hiro grinned and porpoised to thank the Mizukawa as soon as she woke up. The hero thought about the fact that there was already detoxification magic as well as recovery magic. He wondered what the professions related to medicine would be like in the future. Hiro asked Sakura to show off her skills and his jaw dropped. Looking at Sakura's profile, he couldn't understand how the hero possessed fire magic, ice magic, and even lightning magic. In addition, all of his figures were larger than his. Hiro couldn't understand what was wrong. After all, his level was 71st. He got up from his chair and headed for the exit, and the guys asked where he was going. But it was clear as day that Hiro wanted to increase his level. Kamishiro reminded him that the ladies were sleeping here and asked him not to shout. Hiro replied that he was sorry. Sakura told Kamishiro that they were pretty weird, but Kamishiro didn't know what he meant and looked at Sakura's profile with level 71. The boy closed the book and decided to ask Sakura something. He said it was still about 2 hours before the changing of the guard and suggested he talk for a while. As the hero realized, their entire group was from the sword club of the Tria school. In that case, it was no wonder they were all moving like that. Kamishiro noticed that despite Sakura's meager and almost non-existent skills, his level was quite high, which he found very interesting. The hero wasn't quite sure what he meant by the term meager. The sword club was very strong, and Sakura asked Kamishiro why they decided to become players. Kamishiro thought about it and surmised that it was all for training, mental practice, and making money. That was probably the end of it. Sakura found his answer interesting, and Kamishiro thought that exploring dungeons with friends was also quite fun. Sakura asked if he really thought so, but Kamishiro didn't even know the exact answer. The guy admitted that talking to Sakura was quite interesting to him and decided to find out about the hero's opinion. Kaido also felt more interesting in his company than usual. Kamishiro asked the hero if he found anything interesting. Remembering the recent events that happened together with them, Sakura suddenly thought about it. He didn't know what to say to him and didn't know the answer to his question. The heroes were still on the 14th floor of the Serenity Dungeon. The hero thanked the Mizukawa for helping and healing him. The girl blushed again and became embarrassed, saying that she had done nothing of the sort. But the hero didn't understand what she meant, because if it wasn't for her and Mizukawa, he would have died a long time ago. The girl said that she was not like the others, and she had no useful skills, so that was all she could do. But Sakura answered her that no one on her team thought that way, and everyone thought that saving lives was great. So Sakura thanked her again and smiled. Mizukawa looked at Sakura in surprise, and looked away and said that there was nothing to thank her for. Hiro decided to brag that the hero also thanked him, and Nagasawa asked him to finally shut up. While the argument between them got going again, Kamishiro suggested that they look ahead. Directly in front of them was a staircase to another room. Sakura wanted to ask Kamishiro, but the guy already knew what he meant and said he also felt that atmosphere. On the 15th floor was definitely the boss. The group of people that stood in front of the dungeon entrance thought there was a boss inside. Nagasawa suggested a game of rock, paper, scissors, and Hiro agreed. Sakura didn't understand why they were doing this and decided to ask Mizukawa, but she said she didn't know either. Nagasawa said that defeating a boss gives a lot of experience, and that's why they always use rock, paper, scissors to decide who gets the final blow. Hiro snapped at her and said that Sakura would be fat because he was already level 71. The girl was surprised and decided to ask what level he was. The guy reminded her that Sakura is not in the team, but the girl intervened and asked him why he thought so. Mizukawa said that Sakura was already their friend and the other squad members supported her. Kamishiro looked at him and suggested that Hiro had decided to ditch his friend, and Hiro took another look at his friends. In the end, Hiro agreed with the mates and decided to ask Sakura if they were really friends. The whole group decided to play rock paper scissors again, after which their group went down to the 15th underground floor. The group walked down the dark corridors and Kamishiro warned Hiro to take his time as it was dark. Hiro replied tiredly that he knew about it. While Kaido was angry, no one noticed the monster attacking them out of the darkness. Sakura reacted quickly, putting up her hand to protect the girl. The monster sank its fangs into his arm. The girl screamed in fright at Sakura and the group immediately reacted by turning back. Sakura shouted for everyone to move back quickly, hoping that the beast was not poisonous. But Kaido threw the beast back with a kick to the body, shouting at Sakura not to tackle it alone. Analysis revealed that this two-tailed and recommended level was unknown to them. Kaido, believing in his powers, ordered everyone to stand back to watch the man do it quickly. Mizukawa immediately asked Sakura to show her hands. The girl started to heal Sakura's hand. The others from the team ran up to Sakura to find out how his health was. Sakura interrupted them, deciding to say something. The boy said that his health was down by 1 second and it was probably due to some special effect. Kamishiro thoughtfully said that the Kaido was only level 24, at which point the girl turned round and called out to Hiro. At the same time, the monster sank its fangs into the Kaido's body, trying to chew it. The monster was gnawing on Kaido and his health was rapidly dropping, but the team members quickly intervened, releasing Kaido from the boss's grasp. Nagasawa, seizing the moment, quickly made a leap and plunged her blade into the monster's back. Sakura thanked the Mizukawa for her treatment and asked her to help the Kaido quickly. The hero looked at his newly healed hand and clenched it into a fist. Nagasawa tried to hold the monster down while Mizukawa ran to the Kaido to heal it. Kaido began to blame himself for not being careful and thought that the monster would now attack him. At this point, Nagasawa could no longer hold the monster back. The monster broke free from the blade and ran straight at Hiro, and Nagasawa shouted to the boys to run away. Kaido from the confusion covered Mizukawa, and at the last moment, Sakura used his skill. It was a lightning magic of the first level that struck the monster, causing devastating damage. The monster was killed and the entire team froze in place in surprise. A voice inside informed that Sakura's level had risen by 20. The hero thought it was dangerous, but the Kaido was clearly not happy about it. Kaido jumped up abruptly, but Mizukawa tried to persuade him to sit down since he was still injured. Mizukawa looked fearfully at Kaido and didn't understand what was going on. Sakura looked at Kaido in surprise and asked him how he was feeling, but Kaido lunged forward with his left hand and hit Sakura in the face. The team was startled and started to stop Kaido, trying to find out what the moron was doing. Sakura couldn't understand his motives and Kaido shouted for him to shut up. Kaido grabbed Sakura by the scruff of the neck and screamed at the hero, accusing him of stealing his expertise. Sakura didn't understand how Hiro could behave like that in such a situation. Kaido sharply pushed Sakura away and silently walked away, sending him far away. Nagasawa assumed that Kaido's head was hit by urine and Kamishiro decided to apologize to Sakura. He didn't realize that the Kaido could have reacted like that. But just as the hero had expected, things went the same way. Sakura ironically thanked the team, deciding to return first, and Kamikiro tried to stop him, but Sakura still left. The hero walked down the corridor, thinking that from now on no more friends, but the shouts of the guys from the team who followed him began to interrupt these thoughts. Sakura heard someone trying to call out to him. When he opened his eyes, he saw Maria, who looked at him unhappily. The disgruntled girl began to accuse Sakura of falling asleep while he was guarding her and couldn't understand how he dared to do it. Sakura noticed that she had changed into a new outfit and said that it suited her, which made Maria embarrassed. Sakura asked her where she got the dress from since he didn't buy it, to which the girl replied that she had just cut up his trousers and sewn the sweatshirt. Sakura appreciated the girl's creativity and tipped his gaze to the tent lying in the corner of the room. Sakura had too much trouble folding the tent and he just threw it in his bag. The hero didn't expect Maria to be so good at family matters. Maria liked the way she was praised but made a remark to the word of mouth that was unexpected. She thought the word was unnecessary, but the hero thought all her words were so. After that, he and Mary headed further into the dungeon. They confidently cleared each floor until Sakura's level reached 19,958. They reached the 19th floor called the Red Shadow Dungeon. Maria, taking the water bottle, ironically said that this was the end, thinking that they were lost. But Sakura was not disturbed by this, and he was delighted to see the labyrinth-like dungeon. Maria was not happy with this attitude. Sakura suggested an idea on how to get through the maze. You just had to keep your hand on the wall, and Maria was at a loss as to how that was possible. Their conversation was abruptly interrupted because they heard someone at the end of the corridor. From the end of the corridor, a stomping sound was heard more and more clearly coming in their direction. Maria was clearly frightened, But Sakura was curious, comparing the situation to a horror film. Maria sharply told Sakura not to scare her and Sakura quickly apologized. At that moment someone appeared in front of them. It was all of his past team that he had left after the Kaido incident. The guys were happy to have met Sakura here so unexpectedly. With surprise, Maria clung to Sakura and the guys told the hero that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Earlier, even Maria's father praised the Senkou no Gyuren team, saying they were only 4 years older than her. And then the girl decided that she would become like them. She decided to become an outstanding player. Kamishiro was happy about this coincidence, but Nagasawa was more puzzled by who was next to the hero. She thought that Maria was Sakura's girlfriend. But it was as if Maria didn't hear. She started shaking the hero by the shoulders, repeating over and over that it was the same Senkou no Gyuren team. Sakura replied that he knew it without her. It included Mr. Kaido, who was also called the Trash Warrior. With his unique strength and ability to use power-enhancing skills, he defeated his enemies magnificently. And also Miss Nagasawa. She toyed with her enemies with her outstanding fast and beautiful kendo techniques. Miss Mizukawa was super cute. With her diverse skills, she was always supportive and helped the team win. And finally the leader of the team named Kamishiro. Kamishiro smiled and asked the hero what the chatty girl was with him. The girl was thrilled that he was paying attention to her. The hero replied to him that it had been a long time since they had seen each other and apologized for Maria. He reasoned that she was a big fan of theirs. Maria was delighted when they met their eyes. Since childhood, Kamishiro had been diligently developing his martial arts skills, starting with participating in television talent shows. Today, he continued his development path, becoming the undisputed leader among players while exploring dungeons. He epitomized the ideal of a prodigy, but avoided intrusive attention, preferring joyful interaction with those around him. But Kimikairo's efforts were in vain, widening the gulf between him and others. His secret drama of the past was still a mystery. Maria was shocked, each time noticing the fact that the guy was looking at her. Nagasawa decided to approach Maria after noticing that she was very pretty and asked her name. Sakura and Nagasawa at this point hoped that Maria would not die on the spot from happiness. Taking a closer look at the girl, Mizukawa recognized Maria and said that she was a professional model for a famous magazine. Sakura was surprised, for even he didn't know that. Maria clutched her cheeks, shocked at what they knew about her. The hero remembered Maria's words that she had said earlier. She had said that if she took him with her, she wouldn't get any use out of him. Kamishiro couldn't understand what Sakura had to do with a model like her. Maria blushed again as soon as the guy said her name. Sakura told how they met at the entrance to the dungeon. He took her with him so she wouldn't be killed. Nagasawa clapped her hands and said that if that was really true, they could team up with them again. Sakura was shocked just as Kaido opened his mouth in surprise. Maria's tears started to flow, for she couldn't believe such a thing. Nagasawa stroked her head and the hero thought that anyway, he promised her that he would be with her until they finished this dungeon. Remembering what happened earlier with Kaido in the raid, Sakura smiled and said that he hoped for them. Everyone looked at Hiro and Kaido looked away, expressing his indifference. In that case, the heroes united again, and it was nice for Maria to meet everyone. Sakura thought about their team and noticed that everyone who was on their team were celebrities. They had one model and 4 famous people, but the hero didn't think that was a bad thing, because this way he wouldn't attract too much attention. The heroes turned towards Sakura, not understanding why he had stopped again. As the group moved forward, Nagasawa approached the leader and apparently asked him for something. Kamishiro held out his hand to the girl, and Maria almost cried with happiness. Meanwhile, Hiro and Sakura were actively fighting the monsters that came their way. It was as if they were competing with each other, and then the group took a break. While Sakura was eating a hamburger, he offered to take the girl cheese, but she refused. Later, the hero accidentally bumped shoulders with Mizukawa, which immediately apologized and got embarrassed. Kamishiro laughed with her reaction, and so they had fun together. Sakura enjoyed watching their laughter and smiles. That was how their group reached the deepest underground floor of the Red Shadow dungeon. Looking at the boss of this dungeon, it seemed to Kaido that he was rather frail in appearance. Previously, he had won the game of rock, paper, scissors and couldn't let anyone touch his expertise. But the hero warned that if he was in danger he would lend him a helping hand, but Hiro shouted for him not to even think about it. Kamishiro asked Nagasawa to prepare to support Kaido in case of danger and asked Maria to step back. Mizukawa meanwhile had to prepare the recovery magic and Kaido decided to start. When Kaido attacked the boss, Kamishiro apologized to Sakura for asking to team up with him again. Kamishiro knew that the hero could have defeated this boss alone. When the boss fell to the ground, Kaido laughed loudly and said that it was easy. In any case, the deed was done. Sakura agreed with Kamishiro and said he wanted to be free. But then Sakura thought about the fact that in wanting to acquire freedom, he had chosen loneliness. But his feelings were quite strange, even though he was not free now. It seemed to him to be a great deal of fun. As soon as he had time to think about it, there was a powerful blast wave that shrouded everything around him in thick dust. Saikyou withstood the strongest wave and noticed that a huge crater had been created all around, with the boss standing in the center of it. Looking back, Saikyou saw all his comrades lying unconscious on the ground. Right in front of him stood the nine-tailed fox that was the dungeon boss. Its recommended level was not known. Saikyou clearly didn't expect this when he was pushed in a certain direction, and it was an unjustified loss of freedom. Glaring angrily at the boss, Saikyou decided that this was absolutely unforgivable. There was a live report right in front of the Red Shadow dungeon, and the next news column would be about the attraction of dungeons. The girl with the microphone welcomed everyone and introduced herself as Takoda Koko, and she was happy to welcome the audience to the dungeon world as their reporter. Today her feet led her to the Red Shadow dungeon, which had recently become a major topic of discussion in Okinawa province. And as everyone could already see, there were a lot of players gathering here. According to some sources, she had some information. At one point, Takoda compared herself to a spy and laughed and apologized. The reason for this interest in the youth was of course the Senkou no Giran group. Takoda herself was their fan and decided to be sure to get their autograph and of course an interview. Takoda Koko was looking forward to this moment. As she had said before, the Red Shadow dungeon had attracted national attention, and it had been 5 days since the government had announced the reward for completing it. No one knew whether such a person would appear that was capable of defeating this dungeon. At this time, a battle between Saikyou and the nine-tailed boss was raging in the dungeon. During the battle, the hero noticed that Mizukawa had woken up and was madly happy that she was okay. Worried for the girl, he immediately ran up to her. Mizukawa could not understand what had happened. After all, they had previously defeated this boss. She was in a lot of pain, and the hero said that she was lucky. Everyone was seriously injured from the explosion of the nine tails, and because Mizukawa was standing right behind the hero, she was able to avoid the heavy damage. Saikyou asked the girl to save everyone, because only she could do it. At this time, the boss was about to strike the group and the hero used level 10 ice magic. Saikyou was shocked that the ice was destroyed in an instant. He asked the Mizukawa to take care of the others, but the girl was worried about him. Saikyou assured her that everything would be fine. After that, the hero used level 10 fire magic. The fireball collided with the fox that reflected the fire with one of its tails, and there was a powerful explosion. Saikyou had already realized that neither physical nor ice attacks worked on him, all due to the fact that his body was fire itself. The hero decided to use 3rd level flaming cloud magic, hoping that it could somehow help. Saikyou used 10th level lightning magic and was surprised that the fox was able to repel it as well. In the midst of the battle, the hero remembered an incident from school when he couldn't do anything. He couldn't do anything when his classmate was being cruelly bullied. The president's son laughed loudly and asked to see the pathetic face of the cowardly man. He was finally finished by the bully's words. The president's son thought that the boy should not have come to school, and that if it were him, he would have killed himself long ago. Unable to stand his laughter any longer, the hero threw his rucksack right in his face. He called the bullies bastards, which got his face beaten up. One of the guys grabbed Saikyou's arms while the president's son was punching him. At that moment he could do absolutely nothing. And maybe if he had been able to stop Saikyou, maybe his classmates and teachers would have been on his side. And maybe now he would still be going to school. But as it was all Saikyou's gang. His thoughts were interrupted by Maria, who tugged his sleeve and smilingly told him to forget about the past. She said that all this is nothing. Saikyou thought that he had already lost a place he didn't want to lose, and he had to do something now. Mizukawa was very worried about the hero and the others, and Maria said that she was fine. She looked hopefully at Saikyou. The girl replied that she was fine because Saikyou was the strongest. She could only feel sorry for the nine-tailed fox. The hero exclaimed to the fox that they were on completely different levels and used level 10 lightning magic in double. A huge pillar of lightning appeared and the boss was drowned in it, and the hero thought about how it wouldn't be the same as them. He couldn't do anything last time, but what he didn't want to lose, he would definitely protect now. After defeating the boss, the hero's level rose as high as 417. When it was over, Saikyou landed on the ground and his level was able to increase crazily. Maria was already on her feet and waved her hands happily at Saikyou. The hero crouched down next to Kamishiro, happy that everything was fine now. The boy smiled and said that it was all thanks to the Saikyou, because they could not have done anything by themselves. Nagasawa thought it was suspicious that the hero was so strong and frowned, but Maria exclaimed that he was just a badass. While they were discussing his feat, Saikyou was approached by Hiro. He sullenly told the guy that he wouldn't lose to him next time. He also wanted to apologize for hitting him last time. Nagasawa couldn't hear well and asked him to repeat it louder. Hiro decided that if they had the energy to make jokes, then they could get up and go back inside. Nagasawa didn't like his impertinent reply. In any case, they had accomplished their task and Kamishiro smiled at the boys. At last the Red Shadow dungeon had been conquered. Meanwhile, a bunch of people were crowded together at the top of the dungeon. One of the guys noticed someone at the entrance and offered to take a look at it. It was the famous Senkou no Gyuren team. Earlier, Sakura had given something to their group. It was an item that had fallen out of the nine-tailed man called the exorcism necklace. He had decided to ask the guys for something beforehand. This necklace was proof that they had defeated the nine-tailed man, and the hero wanted them to have it. In return, they would tell the world that the 5 of them, not counting him, had made it through this dungeon. But Kamishiro couldn't do that, and Sakura insisted on it. He didn't want any attention, and it was decided that the Red Shadow dungeon was completed by a group called Senkou no Gyuren, and with the help of Maria. All the people were just thrilled. They thought it was simply amazing. They flooded them with questions about the boss and how they managed to pass the poison lake. People also didn't miss the cute Maria, recognizing her as the very model. Kamishiro looked at the hero to make sure he was sure of his choice, but Sakura was absolutely sure of it. Thanking everyone for their company, Sakura said it was time for his escape. Hiro was unhappy that he was leaving so quickly, and Nagasawa suggested that he could stay a little longer in Okinawa. Sakura suggested another time, and Nagasawa decided to make a note of it. The guys looked at the hero with a smile and said that they were always open to him. As a team, that wasn't true, but as friends, they were always willing to help him. The hero agreed with them and they said goodbye. The boy headed on his way home and thought about his skills. Looking at his hands, he had never thought of combining his skills before. Creating different combinations meant a variety of strategies, and he found that interesting. And it wasn't just about levels. This way he could become stronger because of how he used his skills. Suddenly someone called out to him and the hero stopped. It was Maria, who decided to catch up with him. The guy decided to find out what she wanted, and the girl thought it was a rude answer. She said they should have gone and talked to her parents. Sakura didn't understand why she couldn't do it alone, and Maria was perplexed as to how the hero could say such a thing. She blushed, deciding that the 2 of them should have been the ones to report it. But Sakura replied that her alone was enough. Maria clung to the hero, not wanting to let him go. Sakura asked her to be easy, and the girl smiling said that they had a lot of fun with him. They traveled, talked, ate together, and fought. She didn't know much, and it was all thanks to Sakura Makoto. Mary was always happy and drowned in the love of her parents, but the hero knew that the outside world held many wonders. Holding out her hand to the hero, Maria smiled and told him that her parents would feel it too. She asked him not to worry and to go to her parents to tell them everything. Sakura didn't quite understand what she meant. Suddenly Sakura remembered his family and the moment he ran away from home. He told Maria that she was a wonderful person. But in truth, he told her that 8 months ago he had a fight with his parents and hadn't come home since. Maria was just shocked by his words, but he was still their son, and it would be wrong if he did not apologize to them properly. Maria was surprised but agreed with him. She said she would also hate him if he didn't go back to his parents and smiled. So, she decided that they would meet again after Sakura became a real gentleman that would be worthy of her. The hero said goodbye to the girl and she reminded him that they were still the strongest team. The boy laughed and agreed with her. Clashing fists, they went their separate ways. After a long time, the hero still reached the province of Morioka. Earlier, he had written to his mother that he was returning home, and reaching the door, he tried to find the strength to open it. Gathering his courage, the hero pulled the handle of the door towards himself. No sooner had he opened the doors than his mother swooped down on him with a hug. Sakura was surprised by her action. The woman sobbed, and calling her son a fool, said he was home now. When the boy crossed the threshold of the house, in the corridor appeared his father, which greeted his son. Sakura smiled and told his father that he was home. Thus his 8 months of homelessness came to an end. But his life as a player did not end there, and the hero decided to focus and choose the dungeons where he would go next. Earlier, he had spoken to his parents and showed his determination to become a regular player. The N rank was over and now his next rank should be rank G. The boy told his parents that he had left and opened the doors the moment Maria wanted to ring their doorbell. She was insanely happy to see Sakura and said it was time for their date. But before she could say anything, Sakura slammed the door right in her face. Maria managed to get the hero outside and the guy noticed that the other girls, Mizukawa and Nagasawa, were with her. They wished Sakura a good morning. Nagasawa reminded him of those words he had said earlier and talked about the next time. She meant that this next time had already come. Maria had told them earlier that the hero would return home next week and this was their chance to say goodbye to her. Sakura planned to go to the dungeon and frowned. Nagasawa patted him on the shoulder, trying to remind the guy that he still had his youth. The hero didn't quite understand what she meant. Sakura said that the dungeons were his youth, and Nagasawa couldn't understand this guy at all. Maria suggested that they go to the dungeon all together after they went for a walk. The hero pondered her suggestion and agreed. In that case, Nagasawa happily suggested that they should not procrastinate and move on. By the way, Sakura wanted to ask Maria how she got his address, but the girl replied that there were such things that it was better for him not to know about. Sakura even became a little scared. The heroes went into a clothing shop and Maria told the guy that he always wore some beggar's rags and suggested that she, as a professional model, pick something out for him. Sakura frowned and asked her not to change the subject. He reminded her that it hadn't even been a week since they had said goodbye, but Maria thought that Sakura would miss her. Looking through her things, the girl said she wanted to thank him in some way for being so kind to her. She asked the guy to just relax and enjoy himself. Sakura decided to go along with it since they had already come here and took a look at one sweatshirt. He showed the dumbest possible sweatshirt to Maria, which had a centaur-like design on it with a dumb Santa Claus face. Nagasawa and Mizukawa froze in place, not knowing what even to say to this, and Maria smiled. After the shop, they decided to go to the oceanarium. Maria was over the moon and immediately ran to the entrance, exclaiming that she loved oceanariums. Nagasawa tried to stop her, but Maria was already far away. Maria thought that this oceanarium was small compared to the one in her hometown, and yet she wanted to go to the penguins. Nagasawa asked her to stop, afraid the girl would get lost, and the Mizukawa laughed. The oceanarium was the Mizukawa's idea, and the hero decided to ask the girl who she wanted to see there. As it turned out, she really liked jellyfish, for they were mysterious creatures, so she loved them. Pointing to some of them, the Mizukawa said that they were sea jellyfish, and many of them could be kept as pets. And there was a World Jellyfish Museum where rare specimens were displayed. Mizukawa noticed a sign with souvenirs and immediately ran there. When they came out of the oceanarium, Sakura admitted that he had a lot of fun and Mizukawa agreed with him. She was happy to see the rare jellyfish, and in addition to chatting with the hero, Sakura started looking for something in his pocket, remembering that he forgot something. He handed the girl a souvenir and said that he bought it for her. Mizukawa was surprised that it was for her. Sakura said he bought something for others as a souvenir. He suggested that she might not like it, but Mizukawa clutched the souvenir tightly and thanked Sakura. She promised that she would keep it for the rest of her life. The boy smiled, thinking that this was too much. After all, he didn't even choose much, but just looked at the t-shirt and took a random thing. By the way, the hero noticed that someone was missing and asked where the others were. At that moment, the Mizukawa's phone rang. No sooner had the girl picked up the phone than Nagasawa asked to be rescued. She begged them to hurry and said that they were in an amusement park. Maria's voice didn't understand what she was doing, assuming that the girl liked amusement rides. She suggested they go on the next one, and Mizukawa shouted into the tube again. By the way, Sakura didn't know that she was afraid of rides. Mizukawa also didn't know that Maria liked them. While Maria was riding the roller coaster, Nagasawa just asked her to kill her. She thought that children in their time were quite difficult, but Sakura asked her not to make things up. He had to admit that the two of them were good enough, trying to count how many rides they had already done. Nagasaki decided to inquire about the reward for the dungeons. She wanted to make sure that Sakura really wanted to divide her equally, but as he said earlier, he was sure of it and asked her not to start again. Nagasaki thought it was wrong, but since Sakura won, he wanted it himself. He assured the girl that it was fine, besides they needed so much money to live, and he just wanted to enjoy the dungeons. The guy decided to ask if there were any plans for their team, and Nagasaki wondered. The girl said that these were also the plans of most of the players, and surely the guy had already heard of it. It was a rank dungeon called the Dungeon of Evil. It was also known as the Last Dungeon. Sakura knew this Dungeon of Evil. It was located in Lake Yuzori, Aomori province, and was a scary place. Sakura had visited it 2 months ago, but the gate was closed and could not be opened with his fists. There was a thick and chilling atmosphere and absolutely no signs of life. According to Nagasaki, Kamishiro wanted to go to this dungeon very badly. Not that she was against it, but she was a little scared. Recovering, the girl decided that the guy was talking about his stupid dungeons again. She got angry and said that now Sakura should buy her a drink. The hero didn't understand why she was angry, after all she herself had started talking about the dungeon. Passing people began to recognize Maria and Mizukawa and asked for a photo with them. Suddenly the hero noticed how the girls approached some people, thinking that they are alone, and tried to call them with them. Sakura approached the Nagasawa that was surrounded by several guys. She was angry because the hero had taken a long time to fetch water, so she approached him, which made the ambulance men think she was waiting for her boyfriend. Nagasawa complained that these crazy people were harassing her while he was walking somewhere, but Sakura thought they were her friends, and Nagasawa didn't even believe he was serious. One of the men said they could hear everything and didn't understand how she dared to call them that. Nagasaki said that only jerks could have t-shirts like theirs, but then she looked at Sakura. The hero didn't even realize what was the matter. The pumped-up amps introduced themselves as the strongest YouTuber duo, the Tsuchikura brothers, and said that the girl's rotten words would be the responsibility of her boyfriend. They wanted to give them a real schoolboy punishment for disrespecting the 99th level brothers and demanded an apology while they could. Sakura gloomily looked at the guys and thought that for their information, he was a 20,000th level. The brothers asked the guys if they had heard of PvP in any way, deciding that they were today's contenders to win. Now at this time it was an unrealistic hype with players fighting each other for views. Thus, with a winning streak of 38 PvP fights, they became the Imbo brothers that all of Japan knew. In that case, one of the brothers offered the hero a PvP as compensation, deciding that he had chickened out. He punched Sakura in the chest and said he didn't even care that they had insulted his shirt, for he was lucky enough to run into Nagasawa of Senkou no Guren and her boyfriend. The brothers thought they were going to make an unreal video. Sakura didn't understand why he was suddenly her boyfriend, so the brothers suggested that they shouldn't chicken out by saying that their cameraman used level 8 healing magic. Nagasaki wanted to say that he was the one who should have worried. The pumped up guy laughed and asked if she had seen his pumped up chest, but the girl didn't understand what that was about at all. Starting stats appeared when the level system was first activated. They reflected the user's physical form, and the brothers assumed that these kids hadn't even heard of it. Sakura recalled the starting stats and the time when he had them as low. The brothers offered to take a look at them because their stats were pretty darn high, so even if the heroes were level 99, according to the brothers, they couldn't beat them. Nagasaki lost her temper and calling them arseholes in creepy t-shirts suggested that they come over here. She wanted to teach them a lesson, but Sakura told her to calm down. They had no reason to fight them and the guy suggested she just hammer them. The brothers were furious that their t-shirts were being called names again and the cameraman asked them to calm down. Nagasaki stood her ground and said that if the hero wasn't a man, she would do it herself. Sakura asked her level and what she uses. The girl replied that she was level 94 and her weapon was a sword. There was a slight pause and Sakura didn't really want it but decided to do it herself. Nagasaki didn't understand why, and Sakura didn't advise fighting them with his bare hands. They had higher stats, plus he couldn't let them get slaughtered. Nagasaki clapped Sakura on the back and she had to agree. In that case, she decided that she would then slaughter him as well. Sakura smiled at the jock and told him to keep in mind that he didn't stand a chance of losing. The man banged his fist on his arm and acknowledged that the little guy had a deft tongue. The brothers made sure the cameraman was ready and the guy replied that he was all set. The hero suggested that he attack first to gain an advantage, and the jock applied the speed multiplier skill by 3. His foot swiftly swept by the hero's head, and the man thought he had succeeded in teaching the guy and his sharp tongue a lesson. But Sakura was just able to put up his arm to fend off his leg kick. The man thought he just had a thick bone and suggested in that case to try another one. Sakura wondered when he had time to say all that in battle. The jock let his fists go, and Nagasawa was shocked at how fast he was striking. Their opponent's brother had already decided that everything was obvious here, and that the hero had been hit by a rash of pokes that no man had ever gotten up from before. But strangely enough, none of his pokes hit Sakura, so the guy decided to return the favor. Sakura punched the man in the abs, but apparently overdid the punch and sent him flying. His brother tried to call out to him, and Sakura thought it was bad, hoping he hadn't killed him. The guy couldn't believe that his brother could lose and figured that Sakura had used magic or some dirty trick. And since that could be the case, the brother decided to use level 10 air magic on Sakura. Dodging the streams of magic, the hero thought about healing Maria, that idiot that she used 2 hands. He decided to ask her about it later. At some point, the hero noticed that the attack had passed him but was directed at Nagasawa. The hero grabbed Nagasawa to save her, but the girl asked her not to paw her. The brother couldn't believe that the guy could dodge, after all they were brothers. On top of that, Sakura took a toy dolphin and threw it in the man's face, saying that they had won. The brother said that this was simply impossible, so the hero decided to make sure Nagasaki was okay. He apologized for ducking at the moment she was behind and said it was instinctive. Nagasaki looked at the toy he threw at the fool. It was a gift from Maria and the hero felt embarrassed. At this time, the girls had already approached them, surprised at what they saw. Right at the table sat the heroes along with their brothers, and Maria thought they were Nagasaki's friends. Nagasaki ordered them to finally take off and the brothers exclaimed that they would follow their boss to the end. They said they had no use for losers. After bowing down, the brothers apologized for everything. Nagasaki was tired of everything that had happened today and suggested they go home. Maria agreed with her, but they were stopped by the hero. They had already forgotten about the dungeon, and Sakura was ready to go there alone. The girls were shocked that he had any energy left for the dungeon after all that. Maria remembered that he was schizo and agreed to go with him. Mizukawa agreed with her, and Sakura looked at Nagasawa, waiting for her to answer. Nagasawa blushed with anger and embarrassment and said she was fine with it. After a while, a video was finally released in which the hero was able to defeat the 99th level brothers. In one day, the video had already gathered 800,000 views. The guy was shocked that these jerks were stars after all. Sakura didn't understand how they could even record him so easily without his permission. Suddenly a call rang out and Sakura thought it was Kamishiro. He remembered that they had exchanged contacts earlier in Okinawa and the hero answered. The guy said he saw the video of him and realized that Sakura didn't want extra attention or anything. He decided to ask Sakura what his level really was. Sakura was stumped and asked what he meant. Kamishiro thought for a moment and asked the hero to fight him one-on-one. The boy told Sakura that he could probably defeat him. In January, the protagonist went to the underground of the Blue Cave and descended to the 12th underground floor, where he met a dragon. As it turned out, the dragon was not alone and the guy had to fight off both sides. The recommended level of dragons was up to level 95, and Sakura, in the heat of battle, told the dragon pack that this was about to be the most interesting part. As each dragon died, the hero gained experience and an instant level boost of 6 or even 7 levels at once. Sakura's level rose steadily, and Wakanashi remembered their first meeting. Then he saw the hero's skills. They were infinite level increase and an experience multiplier of 1000. He found these skills quite interesting. At that time, Wakanashi was only mildly amused by it. But now knowing about the level cap, seeing Sakura's fight with the Ninetail, and how he had defeated the Tsuchikura brothers, Wakanashi realized that Sakura was already far from level 99. Sakura frowned and hoped that Wakanashi was still a good guy. The hero assumed that Wakanashi wanted a fight, but he didn't understand what the point was here. Wakanashi smiled and told Sakura that there really wouldn't be a point for him, but he had always achieved everything he wanted and needed without any effort. Even before the level system appeared, he stood above everyone else until Sakura appeared. Therefore, for once in his life, Takanashi wanted to achieve something with his real effort. But looking for meaning was pointless when there was someone who knew of his skills and who had a chance to defeat him. Wakanashi was a man who liked interesting things like Sakura, and he could sense from the hero his nervousness. Sakura frowned and didn't know what to say back to Wakanashi, but the guy apologized. He didn't mean that they would fight right now. After all, they both had their own lives. Wakanashi wanted to know when the hero could have a fight. The guy told Sakura that he was counting on him. At that moment, Sakura's level had already reached 23,000 plus. Looking at his profile, Sakura decided that Wakanashi was not lying to him, but it was not clear what his plan was. The hero began to think of a plan on how he could defeat such an opponent as he suddenly heard some noise behind him. It was as if a girl unknown to the guy had fallen to the ground from the sky. Apparently she landed very painfully, but seeing Sakura, she forgot about everything in the world and ran up to him. Looking at the guy, her eyes lit up and a wide smile appeared on her face. The girl assumed that the Sakura was standing in front of her and the guy couldn't understand what was wrong. Sakura was surprised that she knew his name, but then remembered about the YouTuber brothers. The girl turned out to be a fan of the Tsuchikura brothers videos and marveled at how cool Sakura was. She also surmised that Sakura defeated the dragons in the dungeon. Hearing the positive answer made the girl even more excited. She remembered that she forgot to introduce herself, so she said her name. Her name was Izo Miki and she thanked the hero for saving her. But Sakura didn't remember being rescued by her and the girl said that he was his own modesty. She recalled that one of the dragons had swallowed her whole, and if not for Sakura, she would have become food for the dragon. The girl laughed from her words, and Sakura tried to figure out what kind of substances this girl was sitting on. The guy thought there was something wrong and looked at the girl suspiciously. It looked like there was someone else in this dungeon besides him, who didn't have equipment and weapons. The girl didn't understand what was wrong with Sakura and asked to look into her eyes. Sakura silently and coldly stared at the girl and there was a pause. At some point the hero got fed up with this and turned away. Izo laughed at him and said that she had won. She had never lost in this game before, for the loser is treated to burgers. Sakura did not understand her at all. He decided to omit that point after noticing that the girl was alone here. Izo smiled and agreed with him, saying that no one wanted to explore with her. She was alone in a rank G dungeon, without equipment or weapons on the 20th floor. Sakura looked at Izo suspiciously, assuming that she might also have ended up with an infinite level upgrade. He decided to ask the girl her level. Izo offered to look at him, and said that he had level 22. The girl felt kind of embarrassed, but for some reason she decided to mention that she already had 18. Sakura found that hard to believe, since anyone would have died by now, even with a level 22nd. But Izo stubbornly replied that she wasn't lying, even though she had no reason to lie. The girl puffed up her cheeks and decided to show the hero her status. Barely had she had time to open the status before a dragon attacked them and grabbed the Izo. Sakura didn't know what to do and thought it was cruel. He still couldn't understand how she got here with level 22. Sakura wanted to save her but decided to see how she did it. The dragon threw the girl upwards, then decided to set her on fire with its flames and swallowed her whole. Saikyou realized that there was no time to delay and ripped the dragon open and pulled out the Izo. What he saw shocked him. There was not a single trace of injury or trauma on Izo's body. It was hard to even imagine that she was human. The girl laughed and noticed that the guy had taken her hand. Saikyou lowered the girl to the ground and asked if she was okay. Izo replied that she was fine, and the hero wondered how that could even be. The girl, as if she didn't know what he was talking about, and reminded him that Saikyou had saved her. But that's not what the hero meant at all. She had been roasted and swallowed whole by the dragon earlier and should have had wounds. That's not to mention the damage that Owen had received from the lightning strike of his magic. The girl affectionately called the guy by his name and suggested that he calm down. She decided to show the guy her skills and asked him to keep it between them. The girl's level was indeed 22nd and she had 2 skills. It was negation of physical and magic damage. Izo smiled and said that if one didn't believe in damage, then there wouldn't be any. It was safe to say that she was practically invincible. Izo's eyes lit up when she suggested that Saikyou would try to kill her, but the hero said it wouldn't happen in this lifetime. She still suggested he do it, but Saikyou would never agree to it. The girl tried to persuade him by comparing it with a feather under the rib. But as Saikyou had said earlier, there was a no on that and that was it. Looking at Izo, he decided he had no choice and said he understood and would only do it for her. Saikyou asked Izo to step back a little and the girl closed her eyes. Saikyou couldn't believe that he would really do that and flicked the girl on the forehead. From one of his flicks there was a powerful blast wave that flew through the girl. Saikyou was puzzled, not realizing what it was. Izo only laughed merrily. She thought it was cool and said that she got a barrier that covered her body. It was exactly what saved her, and Saikyou admitted that it was indeed cool. But still, he could touch her whenever she wanted him to and it might have seemed strange. With those words, Izo wrapped her arm around the guy's hand with a smile. But even if that was the case, the hero felt that she should have chosen a more suitable dungeon for low-level players rather than a dungeon of rank G. Izo knew that, but she admitted that she wanted a lot of money terribly. Saikyou decided to ask the question again, and the girl replied that she did. She had previously been told that it was possible to obtain rare items in high-level dungeons. Saikyou had a strange feeling. He thought that Izo didn't look like a person who would save money. Saikyou looked at the happy girl in surprise and decided to just go on, but Izo clung to him and said she would go with him. Upon reaching the 21st floor of the dungeon, the girl exclaimed that they were like rangers. Saikyou though realized that Izo could deny the damage, but for some reason he was still uneasy. He surmised that the exact same situation that happened earlier could have happened. While the guy was in the clouds, his thoughts were interrupted by Izo calling out to Saikyou. Izo was surrounded by small monsters that resembled dragons. They licked the girl with thick saliva, and Izo asked for help. The guy felt embarrassed, but he didn't expect more. The girl said she didn't see anything. She had been licked by the lizards, but now she couldn't feel her body. Judging from the status of these poisonous lizards, Saikyou surmised that it was because of their venom. Saikyou concluded that Izo still couldn't avoid the debuffs or attacks altering the state of her body. The hero used thunder magic on 2 monsters at the same time. After the lizards were destroyed, his level went up by 2 more. Izo was delighted by the hero's strength. Saikyou stared at the girl for a while, but then apologized. He had completely forgotten that she couldn't move. He remembered that apparently he still had detoxification herbs. The hero handed the girl a leaf of the herb and she happily ate it. As Saikyou held the leaf out to her, it felt like he was feeding a pet. After chewing a little, Izo asked hopefully if he had any mayonnaise. When she had eaten everything, she thanked the hero for his help. But Saikyou didn't see it as a big deal. But in order not to die, she still needed to choose lower level dungeons properly. Izo exclaimed that she needed to get money fast, or rather a lot of money. She was sure she couldn't do it unless it was a high level dungeon. But Saikyou thought otherwise. Izo admitted that she had a cloud of debts, but she was smiling sincerely, which surprised Saikyou. Clutching her bag in her hand, she revealed that her parents had passed away after becoming their legal guardians and leaving them with mountains of debt. She and her sister lived together but not very well. Her older sister tried to pay them off and at the same time provided for Izo education. She also gave her pocket money when Izo went out of the house. She considered her sister a very good person. She always thought about her but not about herself in any way. That is why Izo wanted to earn this money herself and pay off her debts together with her sister. On the one hand, to let her parents rest in peace, and on the other hand to give her favorite sister a chance to enjoy life. Izo laughed and decided that she was being too chatty. She didn't know why, but she wanted to tell Saikyou all of this. Saikyou was touched that she only wished her parents could watch her grow up from afar. The girl understood everything, and smiling promised not to bother the guy anymore and headed for the exit. To her surprise, Saikyou grabbed her arm and stopped her. Izo turned it into a joke and assumed that Saikyou wanted to do something to her. The hero apologized if he had been rude to her and said he didn't mean to do anything to her, and if she didn't mind, he would like to help her through this dungeon. He thought it was normal to help her level up or something. Sakura himself didn't know what he was saying and apologized and suggested that she forget what he just said. But Izo didn't let him finish and sincerely thanked the guy for his help, saying she would never forget it. She grabbed the hero's hand and confessed that she was very happy and asked him to take care of her. At that moment, Sakura thought that it was definitely not him, for he would never say anything like that. Maybe it was all just because of Izo's determination that shone so brightly. The guy decided that it wasn't true after all, it was just too dangerous to leave her here alone. The girl was jumping for joy, and she even thought she had a little brother. This was fun for her, and in all likelihood, as it seemed to Sakura, she was an unreliable older sister. Izo besides thought that walking alone was terribly boring, and going with Sakura, who had a level above 20,000, made her insanely relaxed. Sakura froze in place, looking at the girl in shock. Izo didn't understand why he stopped, and the guy was trying to figure out how she could know about his level. Sakura asked the girl how she knew about his level, and Izo apologized, saying she peeked at it then when she fell. Now she knew that the hero was insanely strong, and the guy grabbed his head. He decided that he should have been more careful, and the girl promised to try her best to reach that level. The hero told her that level 99 was the limit, which made Izo shocked. The girl couldn't believe it, for Sakura was a completely different level. The hero already regretted his words and thought that it would have been easier to just keep silent. Besides, he thought it was all common knowledge. But since the girl had already seen his level, Sakura asked her to keep his level a secret, and Izo promised that she wouldn't tell anyone. The protagonists reached the 22nd floor of the Blue Cave dungeon. There they met a goblin sorcerer who had the recommended 77th level. The girl was confused and panicked, but the hero told her not to worry about it. A powerful explosion sounded, and from Sakura's judgment, it looked like it was the goblin's only attack. He had no problem catching its attack right in the face and suggested the girl try to defeat it herself. Sakura decided that he would intervene if necessary, and the girl pounced on the goblin. Eventually an hour passed like that and her Izo level managed to rise another 13. She panted heavily and said that he had finally died. The hero had already managed to eat during the battle and praised the girl for a good job. Still, he found it hard to believe that she was able to handle him alone. Come to think of it, Izo was able to gain immunity to damage to compensate for her low attack power, and it looked like she would definitely win if the battle was long. Sakura had told her earlier that he would help her, but she didn't need it. But Izo thought she would still need it and her eyes lit up. She confessed that when she was alone, she used to run away all the time. It was only thanks to Sakura that she dared to fight. The guy noticed the battle axe in her hands and decided to find out where it came from since he had never seen it before. Izo presented him the fallen object from the monster and decided to see if it was to her liking. Definitely Sakura thought that it did. In that case, the girl decided to go ahead because she now had an excellent weapon at hand. Thus the heroes reached the 25th floor, where Izo learnt the flash magic skill and gained the 39th level. On the 30th floor, destroying more and more monsters, she was able to raise her level to 48th. Izo also learnt 1/10 of experience points. After going through many floors, the heroes were able to obtain items such as God Machine, Exodia, Gargantua, Stone Bomb, and Dragon Skin. This was the first time the hero had seen all of these things, so he didn't know how or what to use. The Stone Bomb was apparently supposed to work as its name implied. It looked like rare items could be sold at a bargain, which Izo was glad about. Sakura thought that if the girl could pay off all their debts, that would be great. In the meantime, all he could do was hold it all in his possession, and Izo agreed. After a short rest, the heroes reached the 35th floor of the dungeon. Izo met these lizards again, which were disgusting to her, but remembering her sister, she gathered her courage. In the end, the girl was able to deal with them and gained level 60, and with it the skill of magical detoxification. But after the battle, she fell to the ground, and Sakura rushed to her. Then they reached the 39th floor of the dungeon, where Izo raised her level to 67th level. Of course, she was still afraid of fighting dragons. With these thoughts, the moment she jumped, the girl took out a stone bomb. The bomb exploded as soon as it attached itself to one of the dragons, and the girl attacked the second one. After destroying one of the dragons, her level increased by another 7. She went into battle with fear, but was firmly convinced that no one would swallow her now. Swinging her axe at the dragon, she gave it a cleaving blow on its back. Sakura noticed that she had become quite strong, and with the victory of the second dragon, her level had increased by 2 more. Sakura had no doubt that the girl would soon become a great player. She was able to learn the skill of magical identification, and didn't notice the dragon attacking her from behind. Sakura made it in time and protected her with his magic. Sakura looked at Mickey's Izo status and decided that she didn't need his help. The level 71 girl disagreed with him and said that she needed his help. She was still scared and wanted the hero to follow her. Sakura was interested in the level 1 magic identification skill. Apparently, this skill was to help her learn more about monsters and items. Sakura was surprised that there was even such a skill. Izo asked for permission and used the level 1 magic identification skill on her axe. The weapon was called a destructive axe and its attack reached 450 points, but nothing more was known about it. Most likely it was because the skill was only at level 1. The heroes also tried to identify items with unknown uses, but nothing was learnt. It wasn't clear to them whether it was because of the first level skill or because all these items were just that. Izo smiled and apologized to Sakura, but the guy replied that she had nothing to apologize for. He offered to look at the dropped items on this floor and continue on his way. The heroes reached the 40th floor and the girl noticed that the place was quite majestic. The entire room was covered in huge beautiful crystals, causing an eerie coldness. It was colder than usual here, and Sakura felt that this was the lowest floor of the dungeon. Suddenly, all the passages that were in the dungeon began to close with bars, and they were trapped. The guy noticed a dark silhouette in front of them and pointed at it Izo. It was the floor boss called Dark Liger. Its recommended level was unknown, and the hero wondered if it had really been there since the beginning of their appearance. The guy suggested Izo to use magical identification on him and the girl decided to give it a try. Afterwards, Izo told Sakura that the boss's weakness was holy light magic and that was the end of it. But the hero thanked her for that information as well. Anyway, Sakura was ready to take him on, and Izo understood without words what she should do. The Dark Liger let out a deafening roar that made the heroes clamp their ears. Sakura gathered her strength and used level 10 ice magic, but felt that something was wrong. The girl asked what was wrong and the guy looked at his hand. Looking at the boss, he realized that his magic had been sealed. Sakura had told Izo that his magic was sealed, but the girl was in the same situation with him. In that case, there was nothing left for them but to fight without magic. Izo grabbed her axe, but Sakura asked her to leave it to him. The Black Liger lunged at the girl. The moment he jumped, the boss turned into a black blur and Izo didn't realize what was wrong. The girl stepped back, and the hero also didn't understand what was wrong because Izo was practically invincible. He thought that she could handle it without the help of magic, but still it was the floor boss. Rushing to Izo's aid, the guy couldn't believe that he could only seal with magic. The shadow of the Liger began to consume the guy and the girl screamed. The hero calmed her down by telling her that everything was fine, but it was hard to tell from the looks of it. Sakura decided to use all his powers, but for some reason nothing happened and he was simply absorbed by the shadow. The boss almost absorbed the hero, but Sakura ordered Izo to stay away. No matter what, she was not to touch it. With those words, Sakura was completely absorbed by the boss. The Dark Liger calmly crouched down and licked his paw, and the girl thought that it was over. A black portal appeared around the walls of ice, from which the hero jumped out. Sakura looked around and realized that everything around him was covered in ice. He assumed that he was in the stomach of a Dark Liger. Alternatively, he could have traveled to another dimension. Suddenly the boy heard an Izo calling him, and it all made sense to him. He looked under his feet and realized he was at the very top. He needed to destroy the huge crystal he was in and Sakura decided to try to do it. Sakura gathered all his strength in his fist and punched the ice, but nothing happened. The ice was insanely hard and left only a micro crack from the blow. Sakura surmised that it might have worked out since he had managed to leave a crack. The Dark Liger was already slowly getting closer to the frightened girl, and the guy asked Izo to wait for him a little longer. Izo shouted to the boss that he had killed Sakura, and the hero thought it wouldn't take long. The Liger pounced on Izo and the girl tried to stab him with her axe. The Liger's front turned into a shadow, and the girl fell on her back, dropping the axe. The weapon flew off a great distance, and Izo looked at the boss, who had already almost regained his head. The boss tried to strike the girl, but at the last moment she managed to roll to the side. As she was dodging, she heard a cracking sound beneath her and looked down. There was a strange figure on the ground, which she had crushed to pieces. The small figure suddenly glowed, followed by a powerful explosion that threw the Dark Liger and the girl backwards. Izo stared in surprise at the clouds of dust and noticed a large silhouette. Right in front of her stood the same figure, only 10 times larger, which resembled a living robot. As it turned out, it was the item called Gargantua that had fallen out earlier. After seeing it, Sakura already understood how it should be used. For the girl, it was very convenient, because for her, Sakura was already far away from her. She wondered what he was capable of, and the Dark Liger decided to test it first. The boss pounced furiously on the robot, but it only needed one hit to smear the boss and turn it into a solid shadow. Sakura and Izo were clearly surprised and didn't expect such a. But the shadow began to engulf the Gargantua as well, and eventually the robot found itself within the confines of a huge crystal where it was met by the hero. As soon as Sakura saw him, he had one idea. The girl shouted that that wasn't all, for she still had an Exodia. Izo pulled out a strange thing that looked like a lighter. She tried to use it somehow, but nothing happened. Izo shook the object in different directions until she figured out how to open it. It looked like an ordinary lighter, but as soon as she opened the lid, a huge spirit came out of it, which looked pretty impressive from the looks of it. Izo was shocked and didn't expect such a thing from such a small thing. 3 hours earlier, the heroes had walked to the 38th floor of the dungeon. Saikyou wanted to show Izo something and forgot to do so. Saikyou smiled slyly, his body lit up, after which the guy disappeared. The girl looked around, asking Saikyou about where he disappeared to. Izo jumped up on the spot as she turned around and saw the hero in front of her. The girl wondered how he did it and assumed it was through magic. Saikyou said it was, and that it was instantaneous movement. He had learnt it when he was leveling up. The skill was called teleportation magic and was level 1. But because the skill was level 1 teleportation, it consumed a lot of mana points. Saikyou noticed that he also felt nauseous after teleportation, but he decided that he didn't have to worry about the mana points and he could get used to the nausea. The girl laughed, thinking the hero had another burger or something in there. Saikyou apologized for that, saying that it had been a long time since he had new skills, so he wanted to show them to her. Saikyou looked at the robot that appeared with him in the huge crystal. The big Iron Man kneeled in front of him as if waiting for an order. Saikyou hesitantly called his name Gargantua and he responded. As it turned out, he could also speak. But that didn't matter now and Saikyou wanted to ask him for help. The wall, the ground, and whatever had to be destroyed in order for them to get out of here. But Gargantua told the boy that it was impossible. The space where they were was formed by the special crust of the earth and it was impossible to destroy it. Even if he could create a crack, it would heal itself. The hero looked behind him and noticed a small glow. He turned to Gargantua. The guy assumed that the robot was able to use magic, but the Gargantua said that it wasn't. Saikyou couldn't believe he was serious. But to be more precise, Saikyou could use it as a conduit to release magic. Saikyou became curious and the Gargantua explained to him that he had to touch it. That way, the user could use his 3 skills. The magic placed in it could only be used once, so one would have to place it again. It should have also been noted that Gargantua could not use healing or destructive magic. Saikyou clarified about sealing magic, and as it turned out, the robot could use it. The hero smiled and decided that it was time for them to leave this place. Meanwhile, Izo summoned a strange spirit. The girl decided to ask the humanoid creature if he was really an Exodia. The spirit grabbed his head and grinned. It was as if he had just remembered himself and said that he was a flaming spirit arising from the hells. The girl gloomily looked at the flaming spirit, thinking that he was some kind of cringe, but Exodia didn't understand why she thought so. Izo remembered that there was a boy flirting with her in middle school who talked the same kind of nonsense. Blazing Spirit apologized but asked her to wait. He asked her not to compare him to some awkward teenager. Also, the Exodia offered her to look at the monster. Apparently, he was so afraid of it that he didn't dare to approach them. But Exodia did not come here for chatter. He was inflamed by the fiery depths of hell. He also mentioned the sky that would darken with his blood and the spider lilies. Eventually, the spirit completely forgot what he was supposed to say and Izo decided he was schizophrenic. The Exodia spirit suggested she call it a day and suggested she just wish. He could only grant her one wish, to which the girl was surprised. The spirit explained that was the point of his appearance, she could wish for anything, including money or power. Izo asked him to revive the Sakura since it had been eaten by a monster and the Exodus offered her some other wish. The spirit said that it was impossible, because the man was still alive, just sealed in hyperspace. Calling the spirit foolish, Izo demanded in that case to simply save him. Exodia decided to make sure of her wish, for with his power, she could wish for much more. But the girl was sure of her decision, and that was her only wish. Everything became clear to Exodia, but still he could not fulfill her wish, for the hero used the magic of teleportation of the first level and saved himself. The guy shouted Gargantua and the robot used level 10 ice magic with it. When the monster was sealed into blocks of ice, Saikyou told the girl that she had forgotten everything again. The hero also said he was alright, to which Izo was madly pleased and ran up to the hero. Saikyou thought they were lucky, but Izo didn't know what he meant. Earlier, she wanted to make a wish to save him, but she didn't have time and the guy heard everything. Besides, she already had one wish and to get it back would be a waste, in Sakyou's opinion. The hero pointed at the Liger and offered to finish him, because earlier he had promised to help her conquer this dungeon alone and the girl nodded in agreement. After Izo finished the monster, her level increased by another 28 and eventually became 99. At the end, Izo received the dark orb that fell to her from the boss. They didn't know what it was or what it was called yet, but the girl was sure that it was awesome. The fiery Exodia spirit decided to remind herself and asked her to say her wish. Saikyou was shocked that he had actually been waiting for them all this time, and he had strict discipline. Exodia waited for her wish and the girl considered it. The guy knew that she had a pile of debts and she would most likely wish for money. But to his surprise, Izo said she had no wishes. Exodius laughed. He recognized that the girl was quite interesting and he liked her. At this time, the robot said goodbye to the heroes, asking them to call him anytime. Sakura looked at the girl in surprise, hardly believing her words. Izo smiled at the guy and said that he had already helped her enough and she had to do the rest herself. The guy laughed, thinking that he had done nothing of the sort. Izo noticed that he was on his wavelength as usual and gave Sakura her hand. She vigorously high-fived him and told him that this dungeon was cleared. They wondered how much they could get for selling this dark orb, but they needed a snack first. Izo and the hero rounded their eyes in surprise when they heard the price of the dark sphere and asked for a repeat. They heard the price of 100 million yen and thought they had misheard. But as the girl had said earlier, it was only a rough estimate. As they should have realized, the crystals were expected to become a new source of the world's energy. The girl asked the guys how long they had been watching the news, and from their reactions, it was obvious that it had clearly been a long time. With the help of magical expertise, it was found that this dark ball contains a source of energy several hundred million times greater than a nuclear power plant. The heroes were shocked and thought it was cool, but still the local underground center was not at liberty to determine the price, but the girl could assure them that it was around 100 million. Also, for further verification, she would ask them to hold it for a few days. Once they had determined the price, then the girl would contact Miss Izo. Apparently, she did not understand anything and Izo agreed. By the way, the girl left out another detail for them. The receptionist clarified the rank of the dungeon they had passed and asked them to wait a minute. The girl made a note in her tablet and congratulated the heroes for completing the first dungeon. Sakura and Izo gave the administrator a puzzled look. She also notified the heroes that players who finish an unmapped dungeon would receive a reward. Apparently, neither Sakura nor Izo understood anything about it. In that case, the girl explained that the Red Shadow dungeon was a special occasion, so they would receive 30 million yen. 3 million was given for rank G and they were willing to transfer the money after they confirmed it. She asked the heroes how they would divide this reward. Without thinking for a long time, Sakura asked to transfer everything to the Izo account. Unable to bear it, the girl jumped up from her chair and said that he had taken over again. Sakura looked at Izo in surprise and said that she finished it herself, but the girl disagreed with him. Izo said that they did it together and asked the girl to split the reward equally. Sakura had no time to answer her before Izo ordered him to shut his mouth. She asked him not to anger someone he couldn't kill and the guy apologized. He noticed that the girl was nicer when she was angry. On the way home, Izo was glowing with happiness and decided that her sister would be shocked at how much money they had. Izo also reminded Sakura that he was now friends with Gargantua. That was the reason why the guy couldn't sell it. Earlier in the dungeon, the heroes didn't understand why the robot didn't follow them. Gargantua was afraid that that door was too small for him. He said that this was the end of his duty and he would stay here to rot slowly. Esau did not understand why he spoke so harshly. Sakura assumed he needed a purpose and asked him to protect him in his sleep. It pissed Sakura off when he was woken up by monsters and things like that. Sakura expected him to answer and the robot said he would take it up with pleasure. The guy apologized to the girl for not asking her earlier, but Izo was glad that the Gargantua would be happy. But the only problem remained was the door, and Sakura said he could easily handle it. He opened his bag and told Gargantua that inside it should be comfortable. So they took Gargantua with them and Sakura told Izo that she would not sell him for he belonged to her. The girl smiled, remembering something when she saw the hero and Gargantua. She summoned the fiery spirit and said that she had a wish. He was clearly surprised by this and decided to listen to the girl. The spirit laughed loudly and asked him to show her lust and greed, but the girl asked him to be her friend. She just thought of the guy who flirted with her in high school. Perhaps because he was lonely, he wanted to be friends with her. Izo smiled and thought that the Exodia spirit had no friends. The spirit thought about it and said that you don't have to use desire to achieve that and be friends. By the way, he also reminded that he didn't ask to be compared to this teenager and the girl again asked him not to look so strange and funny. The girl said her name and asked the fire spirit to say it back. The spirit hesitantly said that Isamiki was his friend. At that moment he definitely felt like a teenager. After that, the spirit disappeared and Sakura, smiling, said that apparently they had become close. The girl was in agreement with him, and the guy thought that such a powerful object he could only entrust to her. Izo decided to find out what Sakura was going to do next. The guy thought of dungeons, but immediately remembered that earlier someone had asked him to fight him one-on-one. Izo gave a puzzled look at the guy who just remained silent. After a while, Sakura did admit that he was going to PvP, but Izo didn't understand why he would do that since he was already strong. The girl thought it was the Tsuchikura brothers again, but if it was them, the hero would immediately refuse. But it was Sakura's friend, so he hesitated. It seemed like a pointless fight to him and frankly, He didn't care who won. Izo looked at the guy in surprise and decided to say something to him. The girl stood in front of the hero and silently looked into his eyes with a smile, and the guy thought that this was the same watching contest. Izo reminded him that the first time they met, he lost immediately, but now he could look her in the eye, and the whole point was that he didn't have to avoid his friends, and it didn't matter whether it made sense or not. Saikyou was surprised at this answer and stared at the girl, who blushed and turned away sharply. The guy laughed and said that she turned away, which meant he had won. Izo covered her face with her hands and said it was all from direct eye contact. It was her first loss, but she lost to Saikyou. The hero thanked her for everything and the girl laughed. She thought those were her words and waved goodbye. As soon as she left, the hero decided to dial Kamishiro, deciding that he should not avoid his friends. At this time, Kamishiro was in the midst of a battle. Nagasawa and Mizukawa were thrilled to see the boss die in a second and decided it was cool. Hiro got angry as usual and asked the leader what he was doing. Nagasawa remembered that they hadn't seen him so serious in a while and she wondered what was wrong with him. The guy smiled and said he was just really excited. He had previously received a message from the hero that he was ready to fight him. Kamishiro decided to check on the hero and came to his house. Saikyou was clearly not expecting him, and he looked a little frazzled. Kamishiro wished him a good morning even though it was already noon. He asked permission to show Saikyou his family's land. Saikyou was agreeable and decided to ask how he knew his address. Kamishiro couldn't say it, but someone had told him. Saikyou didn't need to guess that Maria did. Kamishiro threw one thing to the hero. It was a ring called a large shell. This item could take up to 3 hits. When taking damage, it would gradually turn from red to black and then break. That meant that the first person to break it would lose. Kamishiro agreed with Saikyou's guess. After all, this way they could fight to the fullest and it was a good idea. The hero thought he could end it in an instant, but in that case, Kamishiro didn't understand why he agreed to it. The hero replied that he couldn't avoid his friends, and that was his train of thought. Kamishiro smiled as he noticed that Saikyou had changed. Kamishiro surmised that it could have been love, but the hero wasn't quite sure what he was getting at. Kamishiro brushed aside the jokes and suggested they get down to business. Saikyou agreed and prepared for battle. Saikyou was determined that he would defeat Kamishiro. Previously, he had never seen Kamishiro give his best. Kamishiro used ice magic and created a wall. Saikyou jumped up, not understanding why he felt strange. Kamishiro smiled at the hero. Saikyou didn't know what he was up to, but he was sure that he couldn't do it and used level 1 teleportation magic. Saikyou landed a kick with his foot, but he still had no way of getting used to teleportation magic. Kamishiro readied his sword to attack, deciding that the guy wasn't messing with him. Saikyou didn't wait for a retaliatory strike and decided to quickly approach Kamishiro as suddenly an obstacle appeared in front of him again. A shard of ice almost stabbed into his throat, and the hero realized that it was dangerous. He didn't understand how Kamishiro could use so much ice and create an entire wall. While the guy was dodging, the Kamishiro jumped up and swiftly appeared above the hero, about to strike him with his sword. Saikyou once again jumped aside, but the Kamishiro smiled enigmatically. The hero noticed ice shards chasing him. Kamishiro approached the hero and tried to hit him with a quick attack. Saikyou dodged all the attacks that volleyed at him at great speed. Kamishiro was clearly fast, but the hero could dodge in time to counterattack. As Saikyou did another dodge under Kamishiro's sword, he didn't know what to do. He could dodge, counterattack, or simply go around. Saikyou decided to use teleportation magic and Kamishiro said he was caught and gave him the first sword strike to the neck. Saikyou frowned as he realized that Kamishiro had caught him. He had purposely lured him to use teleportation magic. From the start, his ice magic came out of nowhere and he didn't need time to use it. Saikyou decided to find out how Kamishiro used his magic and the guy smiled. He noticed that Saikyou had finally realized it and decided to tell him. Truth be told, it was a bit unfair, but at this point he had 4 skills. One of them was the ice skill, the other 1/10 of the required experience points as well as the magic field. It was a magic that operated in a specific field. Depending on the user, its application could be quite unique. And his magic field ability, it was an extension of the magic domain. It allowed him to freely apply magic in a certain area. Looking up, Saikyou made sure that he was speaking seriously. Kamishiro used high-level ice magic and called Saikyou's movements too simple. He was also terrible at reading people, and Kamishiro knew that he would definitely dodge to the right when he used teleportation magic. With those words, Kamishiro dealt another blow to the hero and said that he was caught again. He decided that it was a check followed only by checkmate. At a meeting with his friends, Nagasawa asked Saikyou to call them by their first names. It was a short story about the hero being kidnapped after school. Since they moved on to high school, no one called anyone by their first name anymore. Nagasawa knew that the 4 of them always called each other by their last names and decided that they could change that. But here Sakura was a completely different matter and they had known him only recently. In that case, Nagasawa thought he might have done it. But Sakura thought they should have called each other by their last names if they weren't already that close. Nagasawa asked to drop the stupid formality and try calling Mizukawa Renge. Mizukawa blushed and asked her to stop. Sakura asked Mizukawa's permission and called her Renge, which made the girl very embarrassed. She almost fainted, and Nagasawa told the guy that he was just a villain. Sakura didn't realize what was wrong, after all she had asked for it. He asked the Renga for forgiveness, and Nagasawa asked him to stop because that way he would kill her. Kamishiro smiled and told the guy that he was a sinful boy, but the hero didn't understand what the matter was. Kaido thought he was not a villain but just stupid, but the same thing Sakura could say about him. Meanwhile, Maria's servant and bodyguard named Maya noticed that ever since Maria returned to the country, she didn't seem happy. Maya surmised that the girl missed her parents and didn't know what to do for her. She brought her a cup of tea, which she almost dropped out of her hands, for the girl had said she missed the Sakura. The girl noticed Maya. She decided to inquire about her well-being. Maya blushed and asked her to pretend she hadn't heard anything. Earlier, Maria had told him that they would meet again when he became a decent man, but then she came to see him on her own. The girl took the pen in her hand and decided that she could not be so weak. She wanted to become a worthy woman herself and set about writing. The sound of a broken pencil was heard and Maya could barely hold back her tears. She thought Maria was cool, and she was also surprised at how Maria quickly dealt with her sadness as she watched the video of the brothers' battle with Sakura.